She was the
yoke.
Big sticker in the back window.
Yes,
Buckfast.
Yeah.
James was a Buckfast today. So guys, welcome back to another ILB Drivers Club Podcast. It's episode 10, and in this episode we have a special guest. So without any further ado, we'll do a quick introduction. Our special guest is Chris Burns, and I think the best way to describe you is a professional stunt car driver / the lead driver at Topgear Live and the lead stunt car driver at Fast and Furious Live. Is that correct?
How you doing, Adam? Thank you for having me. Yeah, you're not far away. I wasn't so much the lead driver on Top Gear, but I was on Fast. But I've done many years with the guys doing all the Top Gear stuff, travelling the world and things. So yeah, a lot of fun times from that.
And you're actually based in Northern Ireland yourself?
I am, yeah. I'm from Belfast, but I live in County Fermanagh. Have done for the last 13 years. So hence the reason I was a bit late for this.
Yeah, but that's all right. That's all right.
It's never set up.
It's definitely never set up, and that's Tom, of course, complaining about how long it takes to set this up. As usual, about 2.5 hours.
You tell me a time to be here, and then it's never ready. And I was early this time though, which is a change.
You were actually early?
Never early.
So I screwed that up then.
No, it's all right. It's always Adam way.
So yeah, we have Tom and James on as usual, and we thought today we would hear about what the professional side of the industry is like compared to our side, where we just basically...
I might need to phone a friend for that.
YouTube videos. But so tell us a bit about your... what is it? You already kind of explained a little bit of your past, but what is a brief history of Chris Burns' professional career?
Well, my parents tell me that when I was a little kid, and I guess most kids come out with mama or dada or whatever for their first words, and seemingly my first word was car, so I'm told. And that's where it really all started to go terribly wrong. So the rest of my life has just been some sort of a journey involving cars, if you like. I just was infatuated with cars my whole life. Knew every model of car from no age. As soon as I had my driving license, that was it. I'm sure as we all do, and many of your listeners and viewers will, when you get your license, it's just all about cars and working towards the next car and modifying your car and maintenance on your car and everything else. So back in the day, before social and the internet, pre-internet, I'm that old, everything was sort of done via magazines, and you only really got a handle on what was going on around the world from your monthly edition of Max Power or whatever it was at the time. And yeah, my friends and I, we basically, like many people still do, we asked around in cars, we've done all the cruising spots, Bangor.
So, the Bangor cruise.
Oh, Bangor, yeah. I mean, a big night. We sort of hung around Lisburn, so a big night for us was sort of starting in Lisburn down to Bangor. No, Sprucefield wasn't even built back then, so that actually used to be from Sprucefield up to the Hillsborough Roundabout. That used to be known as the Ban. That was the sort of the nickname for that. And I can tell you, there was some ropey goings on up that hill on many occasions with a lot of fast cars. But so no, we would have started in Lisburn and then down into Bangor, maybe to Antrim, to Cookstown. Then, more often than not, a police escort down the motorway home. So that would have happened quite a bit. But that was a big night for us, and it's changed a lot now over the years, but I've been part of it, or I've witnessed it over the past sort of 20 years, and how the culture in this country has changed and everything. And I've got my opinions on that and how I think it's going to change over the next while, but we can get into that down the road. But yeah, so arsing around in car parks, doing donuts. I got my license. I'll tell you, long story short, I was working in a DIY shop in Boucher Road, which used to be Budget DIY. I was 16 at the time, didn't have a license. And a guy who's now pretty much my best friend, and I've been very friendly with him since I was 16. He used to dabble in the car things, and his girlfriend at the time worked in the shop, and she said, "Oh, Sean's bought some sort of Toyota Corolla." I'm 16, and I'm like, "A twin cam?" And she's like, "I don't know." And then I was standing at the door that night, locking the door, and it was a winter's night, and there was actually a bit of snow in the car park. And the car park's still there. It's where we all know is Boucher Road, the big place. And shop used to be where Next and everything is now. Anyway, I'm standing at the door, letting the customers out, locking the door behind him, and I hear this crisp Jan speed coming down the road, and I was like, oh. And Sean came into the car park, and it was this big snowy car park, and of course put the tail out, and I was like, oh fuck, I've got to get me one of them. So I went over to him, and I sort of said, I was like, oh, this is lovely and all, can I buy it? And he's like, you don't even have a license, you clamp it. And I was like, I know, but I'm 17 next month, whatever. So yeah, I'd done the license. soon as I could, I bought that car and he kept it for me. So that was where it all started. And
a twin cam. That's a true Northern Irish.
There's no one from this country who hasn't had a twin cam that's does what I do, if you like, or hasn't spent a bit of time behind the wheel of one. But they're a great car and they're worth a fortune now.
Was it 13 grand whenever you bought it? No.
No, it most definitely wasn't. If I recall correctly, I think it was £3,200, and it was a '86 white one. So he just put brand new superlights and John Speed and everything on it, so she was. It's a good car. Good
true
car.
Northern Irish automotive story there.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, needless to say, I blew it up after about 2 months of getting it. But that's another story. But we had to get it fixed. But anyway, that was my chariot, if you like, for attending all these cruises and things. And one Sunday night, word came through the grapevine. Now you have to remember, mobile phones were only in their infancy back then. There was no social, there's no internet, there's nothing like that. And word on the street basically was Max Power were coming. So of course we hit Bangor with a big crowd of us from Lisburn, and the cruise from Bangor ended up in Cumber. There used to be a car park in Cumber. Some people listening will remember that well.
Thompson.
Oh, you know Tom. Yeah, you know where I'm talking, behind the nursing home or the residential home. I think it is. Yeah. So I don't know if it's still there, but that used to be the spot. So needless to say, we waited our turn to go in and do our thing, and we went in and done a bit anyway, and that was all right. Got chatting to Fly, and I think at that time, I'm trying to remember the reporter that was over. I'm sure you maybe know Andy. Fly's sort of well known in the global car world. He's been a car photographer for. Him and Jim Blackstock founded Max Power. Whenever it first started, but basically he's one of the most known guys in the world, and struck up a bit of a rapport with him and whatever. Then jumped a few years, so I'm now 21. I've bought myself my first M3, and my friend had
shape was that,
E36. Yeah, she was 95 Avis blue car. I was only a couple of years old when I got it, so it's the equivalent of going out now and having an F80 at 21, if you know what I mean. I remember I was in Thompson's garage that night, the night before. I was absolutely fucking rode off. And I said to a friend of mine, I was like, I need you to give me a lift tomorrow to collect my car. And he's like, what are you getting? I was like, an M3. And he's like, bollocks. And I was like, no, we're getting an M3. Nice. So that was all right. We got that. And had that a few months. And then Max Power were coming back. So needless to say, the car got a clean, tires got slicked, and 2 spares in the boot, and off it went. And I remember driving into the car park. I wrote a reel. We had a website back in the Steer from the Rear days, and I wrote a wee spiel in it about how all this happened. But we drove into the car park, and there was a new guy with Max Power at the time, a guy called Ben Barry. And Ben's still a good friend to this day, and he's now the editor of Car Magazine. So he's very much still in the game. Anyway, Ben had only started, he was a junior, if you like, at that time with Max Power, and Andy seen us coming in, and he recognised us straight away, so he sort of called a halt to proceedings. He was like, need to change my lens. I don't know shit about cameras, but anyway, he needed to do whatever he needed to do. And he said to Ben, he's like, get up that tree with a camcorder, and of course Ben's like, why? And he's like, just fucking do it. So off Ben goes, scurrying up the tree. And then what happened next later ended up on a Max Power video. It was video back then, it wasn't even DVD, it was video. And so we done our thing or whatever, and we kept in touch and everything else. And then a few months later I got a phone call from Ben, actually said that Max Power were going to run their first ever big live event, like a live show, if you like, which obviously became known as Max Power Live, in the NEC in Birmingham. And would I fancy pulling a bit of a team together and coming and driving at it? So we were like, fuck yeah.
So that was the first in. Yeah.
So that was the first in. That was the very first.
There you go.
There's a bit of a story behind it, but on the running order, you had Terry Grant and you had Russ Swift and Nigel
boys from Northern Ireland.
We used to be down literally at the first year. They wanted to have 6 cars. So first phone call was my good friend Mark Brand, and then Paul Conlon, my other good friend as well. And then we needed 3 other guys, so we got 3 other guys. So we landed there with 6 cars. And actually, Jeremy, I was the first time I met Jeremy Clarkson and stuff. He was there that year, him and Vicky Butler Henderson. And anyway, so we had the cruise trip, done our thing. But on the running order, we were down, everyone has their name, it was very professional. And we were literally wrote out in this sort of running order sheet as the Irish lads. And it was like, well, it was a bit of an eye opener from us, because we were sort of going, and you've all these sort of pros turning up with their big motorhomes and sponsorship and all that. And we were like, oh, this looks good, And so it developed. The next year they were back. They were like, by this stage we had sort of formed their own little team, which we called Steer from the Rear, and we had that name. We at the time, the internet was just in its infancy, so we registered all these domains for our websites, but not quite sure what we were going to call ourselves. So we kind of threw it out there to the Max Power readership, if you like. And we gave them all these different options, and everyone picked steer from the rear as the bit.
There you go.
For the right or wrong reason is the one that stayed in people's head, if you know what I mean. So we became known as that, and of course we turned out the next year. We made a bit of an effort. We got ourselves shirts printed up and all that. And
A bit more official looking.
we're still fucking the Irish lads in the running order. But anyway,
we can relate to that
with shirts this
we were
time.
trying, we were trying. And what actually happened was we progressed from a bit of a motley crew. We had Paul and I 236 M3s, and Mark had a 300 ZX. And whilst our M3s were great for doing what we do, and Mark's had a V6 twin turbo and shooting flames and all that, and we were like, we need some of that. So we bought our 300s, and Paul and I painted ours in flip paint, which was like literally came in from the States for us. At that time, so again, it was very, very new. It was only started. You have to remember, the internet wasn't really going, so you're dependent on what you see in magazines. And 1 year, we eventually, after about 30 engines later, we discovered what the problem was with Mark's car. But 1 year he blew up anyway, and the organisers, who are, I'll go to that in a minute, but they're still very good friends to this day. Mark's car basically threw a rod out the side of the block. So, of course, we were all standing there scratching our hair going, there's a hole in the engine, this isn't going to do it. It was like Saturday morning. And they came over and they were like, so you guys just going to do a 2-car routine, for the rest of maybe it was a Friday. They were like, for the rest of the weekend or whatever. We were like, no, we'll fix it. You book 3 cars, we'll get you 3 cars. And they're like, there's a hole in the side of the engine. We're like, we'll fix it, we'll figure something out. And so basically, a guy Daz, who does a lot of stock car racing, he managed to track down an engine. Nigel Morris, who owns Bigfoot, managed to get it picked up or whatever. He had some sort of involvement, and lo and behold, an engine arrived at the NEC in Birmingham a little bit later. It was real handy because they just had a new delivery of Heister forklifts, and being from Belfast and all, I knew how to hotwire one of them. So we got that hotwired, and the engine got chucked in. And there's a great photograph, actually. I'll find it. I'll get it to you. But there's a great photograph of Mark. Basically, we carried on. Like there was 8 or 9 shows a day at this point, so you're literally going out, doing your thing, coming back in. The car's literally just getting a chance to cool down, and you go again. And there were massive, massive crowds. This was like motor show live action in its conception, so it was huge. It was massive, massive attendances at these shows. And basically, we got in between doing all the shows and everything else. We got the car engine transplanted in and up and running and cooling into it, and we didn't have time to put the bonnet on. So the last show of the day, all 3 of us lined out, and the guy Paul Massell and Joe Guest actually were presenting it at that time, and they sort of called a bit of a halt, and they were like, we just want to tell everyone here a bit of a story, this car blew up and blah blah blah, and the guys have worked their nuts off to get it back, and give them a big cheer, hey. And there's a real good picture of Mark, with no bonnet on the car, and the car just full hang, smoke pouring off it, and that was us back up and going again. The next year we went back, fucking steer from the rear on the sheet. We were like, we've made it. We were like, we've finally earned some sort of respect. But that was how it all started. It all started with doing the Max Power shows and everything else.
We can definitely relate to being called the Irish lads when we go to England, though. Like especially.
Pretty much everyone's like, there's the Irish side of that.
But that's
when you travel outside of this country, there's nobody recognises north or south. It's just fucking. Do you know what I mean? It's just nobody really. It's strange, but
you get people trying to like start. Oh no, but the definition I can't be Irish like.
Yeah, no. I've tried explaining that to people too, and then you just after the 10th time, you're just like, fuck it, whatever.
You're talking about Max Power. For us back in the day, it was the Fast and Furious, not the Fast and Furious, the Fast Car mates.
So
it was exactly the same. It was even in Bangor as well. Hollywood. I remember the whole in a Hollywood exchange, and it was the Fast Car meets that we used to all go to, and everybody. Who was the photographer? Steve McCann from Scotland. And then he used to do, it was the exact same setup basically, but there wasn't, I don't think there was anybody who was coming down to do, there was just burnouts, wasn't there, really?
Yeah, it was just mainly burnouts, but then you would get like someone would rumour that fast cars coming down, and like everyone would get real excited.
But did you not find that it got to the point where every fucking weekend they were supposed to be coming?
And it was cool fast cars coming. Everyone piled up, and it was like,
who always started them rumours? That's what I want to know.
Someone was like, fast cars coming, and then everyone freaked out. It's like, it's great, and then just got more people there. But it was good.
They come like twice a year, but 52 weeks a year, everyone thinks they're coming.
So did you get headhunted then, basically from that?
Well, I wouldn't say headhunted, but what happened to say Ben made that initial call for the Max Power, and then it went from there to sort of broadening horizons, if you like. We done Crail a lot in Scotland with Willie.
So basically, you turned that into like kind of.
Well, we were like
a performance. You went and did.
Yeah, I mean,
what was the performance like? Well, I love the way I'm calling it.
It was real funny. So basically,
like,
we were three lads. We're from Northern Ireland. We love doing donuts, sliding cars around. So
get the cones.
But we're trying to be professional. You know what I mean? So we're trying our best to be professional. So we've got these shirts and all, and we're. The guys, we've got trailers, and eventually I got a lorry, so I'm turning up with a flatbed. All looks good, everything's good. And then we kind of figured, right, we need to have some sort of a routine, but, we don't want everyone to know that we only have one routine. So I don't know which one of us it was, but basically one night in the bar, we coined the idea of having all these numbers. So we decided our main routine was 4B. I mean, to tell you the truth, it was our only fucking routine, but we called it 4B. So, of course, anytime we're funnily organised, it's like, we'll do 4B or we'll do, 3. 4B. And, of course, the organisers are looking on going, these guys full shit, or did I have that? We always only had one routine.
It was always 4B.
It was always one. And to be fair, it was always, a lot of the sort of professional acts, which I later learned, you'd be wearing an earpiece and you'd have a coordinator or a choreographer. That's really how most big stuff's done, professionally.
You boys just
we're literally winking and nodding and banging the door to sort of indicate, right, come in, do a propeller as we called it, and we had all these sort of things. But to be fair, we had a I wouldn't quite say telepathy, but we had some sort of a understanding and connection between the three of us. So we all drove very well together, and it was kind of funny because eventually we ended up in Greece, and I'm sure you've heard of Team Orange, like the drift team and stuff. So we were in Greece, we're in Athens in Greece, and there was one particular night, there were evening time shows, and the arena was massive, so you were getting second, maybe third gear, we were able to get a bit of speed on. But we had we've been doing this for a few years by this stage, so we kind of got our 4B down to a fine art, if you like, and anyway, we used to do this propeller thing. We're all three cars, we're doing obviously a donut, but tight together, so we'd literally nearly be touching each other's door, in a 3-pointed star, if you like. And the guys from Team Orange, like, they've turned up with their fucking, like, I think whatever they were at the time, the S15s or Subaru, whatever. They had the best of the best. They've got a team of mechanics. They've any endless amount of spares. My 300 ZX had like Evo 6 shocks in the back of it, and whatever I could find around Sean McKeever's yard and pulled into the front of it. And we were just your typical Irish guys, But they turned up anyway, and they tried to emulate a few things. And don't get me wrong, there was other areas they were better than us, but. We'd our craft down to fine art by that stage, So yeah, we had a good run at it. We
made
kept
a good
going.
Impression.
Yeah, made a good impression, and we made a lot of friends. Many of whom we're all still speak to regularly today, which is, I think, anyone who's really into the car culture can relate to us. Like, you guys have friends all over the world, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and viewers do too. And that's the wonderful thing about cars. No matter your background or anything like that, cars is sort of a universal global community, if you like.
Yeah. Absolutely. And two questions. I'm interested to know, you got the M3. Was that your daily driver and then also your show car?
The 36. So basically, right up until the point, we, back in the day, we ended up with more or less the first 3 S15 Nissans in Ireland. We literally got them on the first boat. I sort of feel a bit sorry for, I know I'm an old fart, but I feel a wee bit sorry for this whole pre-internet thing that nobody, a lot of people won't. The Jap import craze was literally just starting, and there was a boat used to come in like every month loaded with stuff, and like literally the first boat that came in, me and a few other guys were literally hanging off the fence at the docks in Dublin going, wow, look at that, oh wow, look at that, oh, it's a skyline, it was all stuff you'd just seen in magazines or heard about, or, it was just like,
so we're definitely spoiled.
Well, we really are now. I mean, everything's at your fingertips, but it was all good. But we had the first 3 S15s in, and by that stage, we got to the point, as I say, where we're, let's call it, trying to be as professional as possible. We were transporting our cars. Up until then, when we had our 300s, we drove them. So literally, no matter where we were going, we drove our cars, and I mean, we had as much fun on the journey to and from most of these shows as we did doing the show. There was one quite famous year. I'll not say his name, but there's a good friend had a 360 Modena Ferrari yellow. We brought it over to Max Power one year as well, so we were rolling back towards Holyhead from the NEC, and I don't quite know whose idea this was, but we ended up bringing all the traffic on one of the major motorways in England to a crawl. And again, cameras weren't really a thing back then, so so we've basically taken 4 lanes of the road. We've got the 300s and the Ferrari all slowing down to like 20 miles an hour, just as slow as we could go. The traffic's backed up behind us, but the ironic thing was, as we all sort of looked in the mirror going, geez, there's a lot of traffic, and every car that was behind us had like a camera because it was all the people coming from the show. So and our cars are, you know, they're flip painted, and by this time I'd picked up a bit of sponsorship and they're logoed up and everything else, and big drag race down the motorway and the silly speeds, you know, and it was all we had as much fun traveling to and from them as we did, you know, actually doing them. They were good. They were really good fun. Like.
Where did you practice? Was it a typical Northern Irish just go to a car park, or
I say I had my twin cam when I was 17, and I'd say from the age of 17 to 19, I'll even name it. It was Demurray Police Station. I'd say the police in Demurray knew myself and my good friend Mark on every single policeman knew us on a first name basis. And I feel as you sort of define that a bit better in that there was one night Mark had his 300 by this stage, and the whole TV thing had just happened, you know, so you can now get a TV for your car. So he'd bought one of these Kenwood pop-out TV jobs, and I can't remember what it was. It might have been the first Fast and Furious, or it might have been whatever movie, Gone 60 Seconds, I don't know when that came out. Whatever it was some movie we were watching on the screen, and there was a foot patrol coming down. And he's like, all right, what are you doing today, lads? I'm like, oh, TV in the car, and we're just making conversation. And he said this, he says, you know, every time we see black circles anywhere in our district, he says, we know it's one of you two fuckers. And it's basically, he said, he's like, but he says, in all fairness and with respect, he said, we never see you speeding, and we never see you doing anything silly, if you like. What would happen, we would drive, and, you know, I still do, sort of in the speed limit and all during the day, but come midnight, come 1 or 2 in the morning, you know, you find a car park, find a disused industrial area or whatever, and that's where we'd honed our skills, if you like. Yeah, and there's a park, Lady Dixon Park, and there used to be a tree at it with this tiny roundabout, and Mark and I used to have this sort of banter over who could do the better donuts. You know, this is back before we got steer from the rear up and going. And Mark was going on holiday at the time, and I was like, by the time you come back, I was like, I'm going to be nobody's going to beat me at doing that. I was like, I will have that mastered. And there's one night I was in the car park anyway, and I got that good at it. I could put the wheel on the curb, the front wheel, and there was like a tree in the middle, but there was a drop. So if you went over the curb, you were going to drop right down on the arms, the suspension arms. You were going to get stuck basically. So you didn't want to overcook it. But I got that handy at it anyway, that I could run the tire around this. So one night I'm there practicing, like on the train cam, just practicing. There's a few other guys with me, and the next thing, just out of nowhere, boom, blue lights. And I swear to God, had I not seen them in the mirror, they came in without the headlights and all on. I was literally full chat around this thing, and I just got stopped before I slapped into them with a quarter panel. And so I was like, oh shit, do you know what I mean? So yeah, there was a few times where we had a few.
Was it slap on the wrist then, or what was it?
What's the statute of limitations for prosecution? Does anybody know? Get somebody Google. Right.
Oh, I think you're well past it now. Yeah.
So basically, so with Fred Mark, I couldn't understand it because the cop was like, you know, that's it. I finally got you, losing the books, blah, blah, blah. And I was being a bum at the time. I don't think I was working. And anyway, one morning, Dad shouts up. He's like, Chris, get down here. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, the police are here again. And I was like, all right, okay. So downstairs, expecting, you know, handcuffs, whatever, I don't know. I was expecting something anyway. And he goes, so yeah, I just need to read you this. And he read me out the whole spiel, and he let me off more or less with an official caution. And I'm like, oh, class. Do you know what I mean?
Straight
off we go again. Exactly.
No worries.
Anyway, fast forward a few months to Christmas time, and Mark, I'm out right. Mark used to have a lift in his garage. His garage was like a hangout, you know. It was like where we all worked at our cars and changed their diff oil and fixed all the shit we broke. And anyway, Mark's dad popped out and to have a chat with us, and lo and behold, it transpired. He was sending like I'm not obviously a policeman, I don't know the ranking order, if you like, but whoever was the boss man of that region or that station, whatever, he was basically sending him a pallet of alcoholic drink every single Christmas to give to the guys to try and keep Mark, his son, and myself out of trouble.
Unbelievable. Are we on official bribe?
Are we on official bribe? I found this out. I was like, this is class. It's like, this is how we've survived totally unknowns to ourselves. This is what was going on, you know. So yeah, so anyway, but this is obviously going back a long time ago.
You've transitioned basically from drifting around a tree in like Lisburn to
like part of the mafia almost, and like bribing police.
Well, no.
I was going to say to like basically travel the world.
Times were very different back then, you know. And thankfully it's not the same anymore. But you know, being a police officer was a very different game back then from what it is now. You know, and I'm glad to say it's changed and whatnot. But yeah, they I guess it's more to worry about. And say cameras and things weren't a big thing. The camera phones, the word's fuck was camera phones. You know, the things we got up to. You know, anything you do now, someone straight out with a phone. You know,
internet.
So you've transitioned from twin cams around trees to basically travel the world. Being the Stig.
No,
you were not dressed as a Stig, no?
No.
What were you?
Some say he had a funny accent, but
No.
no.
What was your role in? Was it Top Gear before Fast and Furious?
Yeah, well, so basically, how we got to Top Gear. So we done our sort of years of steer from the rear and everything else, and say the internet had boomed, and you know, all of a sudden people were seeing everything online, and Ireland being Ireland, you know, it used to be back in those days. It was Sierras or twin cams. There wasn't that many options. But then the Jap imports. Well, yeah, but the Jap imports start to fly in. So now all of a sudden there's endless amount of rear-wheel drive Jap stuff kicking around. You know, within reach of most people's budgets and things. So we got to the point where all of a sudden everybody has a rear-wheel drive car, and there's a lot of driving talent in this country. There's a lot of talent, as far as I can see, in every motorsport form in this country. I think go off on a rant now, but I think as a sort of a nation, if you like,
especially a small country.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I'm not sure off the top of my head the population, but there's bound to be a way of working out a ratio per population head for this country, and the amount of very successful motorsport people that have came from here,
definitely
across all forms. You know, motorbikes. You know, GT racing, open wheel, whatever.
Driver as well.
I mean, I think as a very small country, we can very much hold our head high on the world stage, and I've been very fortunate in that I've travelled the world for a long time and seen culture in different countries and things, and like I can honestly tell you now, we're right up there. Like I firmly believe as a level of driving, even on the roads, never mind sort of talent for arsing around in cars, I think we really are right up there on the global scale. I do think, rightly or wrongly, we maybe have to try a little bit harder. If you imagine sort of getting gigs and jobs, and everything's got a budget these days, so you know you're asked to do something, and there's a lot of driving talent in England as well. Yeah, we're a bit more expensive because there's an extra flight involved or whatever the case may be. So you do have to. It's like you guys doing your work. You know,
we can relate. Yeah, for sure.
So you have to try that bit harder, but I think that's all in our nature over here.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
So where was I? Lost place. So
transition into Top Gear, I think.
Yeah, so we done the steer through thing.
Definitely the Stig, like 100%.
No, sometimes not.
He took his helmet off when he walked in. I seen him.
You said you would.
Drove that van up full gear like.
It's Michael Schumacher.
No. Anyway, so yeah, we got to the point whereby shows were starting to dry up because all of a sudden there was a show every weekend. You know, that's in my opinion, that's what happened in this country. There was a show every weekend.
It happened 2 years ago as well.
It got to the point,
and then it went 3 years ago, and then it went dead. So
yeah, and I mean, it used to be back in the day there was one or two real good shows, and they were brilliant. People worked on their cars. You know, to get this, it's like I suppose what dubshit is now. People worked on their cars for a solid year to get their car ready for these one or two shows. But then it's like everything, you know, people want to make money off it or whatever, and suddenly there's a show every week or there's a meeting every week. And respectfully, Northern Ireland's not a big country, so once you've been to one, you've kind of seen everything there is to see. Absolutely. It's the same stuff over and over and over again. And then the live stuff, all of a sudden, everyone had a rear-wheel drive car, so you know, we didn't really make any money from our days of doing all that because we spent that much replacing engines in Mark's car, but we eventually found that problem. But anyway, by this stage, you know, we're at the point where people are coming along and sort of saying, I can do that, I'll do it for free, you know. So all of a sudden, we've guys that we've worked for years sort of saying, we really want to book you guys, you know, but by the time we get your boat and all, it's working out quite expensive, and such down the road, he's going to do it for free. He won't do as good a job, but, you know, still fill a hole. Yeah. So we got to the point where things were drying up, and like we were doing it right. We had our own proper liability insurance and everything else, which is quite expensive. And so got to the point where we had to sort of make a call and go, look, I think we've maybe had a run at this. So we parked the cars, if you like, and we done the odd bit, but it was all of a sudden it was very sporadic. And with the S15s at the time, and I decided I had too much money tied up in the S15 to sit there doing nothing, so I sold it. And Top Gear Live had just started. And they were doing a show in Dublin, And by this stage, I was quite friendly with Terry Grant, and Terry happened to say to me, "Look, we're having a big party on the Saturday night. Come down." I was like, "Oh, are you sure the organisers won't mind?" He goes, "It's Simon." He says, "You know Simon, and he'd be glad to see you." So I was like, "Right, okay." So I was in the Jameson distillery, and we went down for a big party, and Topgear parties were fucking top notch. I can tell they really were. But
this the live gig?
This was the live gig. So it was at the RDS in Dublin. I wasn't driving the first year, so basically they just started their tour, if you like. So I went down anyway. Of course, got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen for years and everything else, and feeling come over to me like, "Oh, would you not like to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I was like, "Phone me. There's my number." Do you know? Yeah. So a couple of months later, I got a phone call, and they were going out to South Africa. They were going out to Johannesburg. And BP were running a thing. They were doing they were sort of sponsoring the event, if you like, but they had their own, not in the main live arena, they had their own section of it, and they were basically doing passenger rides, and they asked, could we go and do that? So myself and Mark flew out for that. And yeah, it was kind of a roundabout way. There's some people that are listening to this might know him. There's a guy called Ken Irwin, and Ken is like the godfather of auto testing here. And very sadly, Ken took ill. Ken was one of the main drivers for Topgear at the time. And Ken took ill, and he had to be admitted to hospital. And thankfully, he made a recovery, but they were short a driver. And I was there anyway, doing the PP thing. So they asked, could I step into his shoes to cover for the weekend? And I'd done that, and I managed to do a good job of it and not screw it up or anything, and that kind of opened the door, so that's more or less how it started. And I have to say, I was thinking about this on the way up the road, and since we've talked, and the span of years across the Topgear live stuff was the stuff dreams are made of. It really was. It was such a fantastic time, and some of my favourite memories from, as you say, going from doing donuts around a tree outside Lisburn to traveling the world with these guys, and some of the stuff I've managed to find myself in a position to do.
It's crazy how it evolves, isn't it? Like the people
but you can't give up. You have to, no matter what you do, you just have to keep plugging away. There's more times friends and.
Sorry, I think I kicked your camera.
Right.
Is that all right, Cameron?
Yes.
You can kick it over, man.
Cameron, give me a dirty look there.
But there's more times people sort of said to me, you're not, maybe you've had a good run, knock it in the head, and.
Yeah,
get back to get the real
job. That's what your
passion
is,
it is.
And I think a lot of people don't get that.
You have to just keep trying. You have to keep plugging, and with hindsight, maybe I was a bit. I maybe should have maybe sort of charged a bit more, tried to do a bit more professionally than I did. But look, I did what I did, and it's not over yet. I'm still doing bits and pieces, but certainly the run on Topgear, I have to say, I look back on that whole span of years with some awesome memories, and I was very sad whenever the whole thing ended, if you know what I mean.
Did it end then with the same as the main show, kind of at the same time?
Yeah, or? So without getting into too much detail, obviously there was an incident, and
one guy just messed up everyone.
Well, there was an incident, and it kind of put a spanner in the works. But basically, we had pre-sold tickets and things for Topgear Live around different venues, which all now had to be, for want of a better word, abandoned. But you're in the whole problem from a marketing and everything else point of view. So basically, the guys managed to do a deal with the BBC that we could finish off our run of shows, if you like, under the Clarkson Hammond and May live banner.
I remember that.
So yeah, we had brought Topgear. It's actually really difficult to do a show here at the whatever it's called now, the SSE or it's the Odyssey. We all know it's the Odyssey. Everybody knows it's the Odyssey. But it's a really difficult venue to do any big show in. The venue itself is fine, but unless you're involved in that kind of world, you don't realise what goes on behind the scenes.
No staging area, is it?
Exactly. It's very, very tight backstage, so it's a real head scratcher as to how to, especially when you're doing a big show with a lot of cars and things, because it's obviously taking up a lot of space. But we had managed to do a Topgear live, a Clarkson Hammond and May live there, and I'd been trying to get it done for years. Now, I didn't have any direct involvement in the booking process, but obviously I knew the guy, and I'd literally be every time I seen him, so chirping in his ear and pushing.
Where's Belfast?
I was like, trust me, if you do a show here, you're going to sell all the tickets. It's we love this stuff. And eventually I convinced them to do it, and it was great. It was really funny because car football, car football is, there's different companies, if you like, have tried to emulate what we done with car football, and car football is a funny thing because obviously when you're doing that kind of stuff, it's all highly choreographed and there's a lot of moving parts, and you don't realize when you're watching just what all's going on, if you know what I mean, because you've got obviously the cars, you've got all the performers, you've got the lighting, you've got the sound, you've got everything that you have to be in sync with, like to the seconds. You know, it literally has to be bang on. And car football, it's always at the end of a live show, and you can't possibly choreograph it. It's just whatever happens. You know, it's just mayhem. It is literally mayhem. And
see, when you explained that there, I was like, how are you choreographing?
You can't. You just
how are you
can't.
doing that? And then you're like, it's not. I was like, yeah.
And it was always, depending on the size of the venue, it was always three of us versus Jeremy, Richard and James, you know, or often if one of them was a bit sore, would have a guest presenter or something in their slot or whatever. But normally it was 3 cars. But if you went somewhere with Johannesburg, for example, at the Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg's massive, so you used to maybe do 4 cars aside, if you know what I mean. And some games were crap. Some games, no matter how hard you tried, they didn't flow or they didn't work. And then equally some games, like you're wiping tears away from your eyes with laughter. And
while you're driving,
the fun that was had during car football.
So you have radios in there? Can you talk to the guys, or do you talk
we can't talk back, but we've got a choreographer, a wonderful guy by the name of Colin Sangster. And Colin done all the choreography for Topgear Live. Now Colin's background is he used to choreograph the Royal Ballet and stuff. So he's got a massive CV.
He took a turn.
He really knows what he's at, you know, and Colin, you know, you're doing like a 90-minute show, if you like, or maybe longer, and all the way through it, Colin's sort of calling, for want of a better word, pace notes. It's not that you don't know where you're going, you do, but as I always say to people, and whenever we were doing fast and I'm sort of training people up for that, I was like, look, whatever happens with your arms and legs, it just has to happen. You know, you can't think, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. It just has to be instinctive, because what you actually have to concentrate on is looking out the window at where you are in your car, or you have to be in sync with everything else, and you're listening to sort of, you know, you maybe have a move to make and he's giving you like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you know you have to be in a certain mark at a certain time. There's so much going on. Whatever's happening with your hands and feet just has to happen instinctively. You can't sort of think, oh, I have to lift the handbrake or I have to turn. It just has to happen. And so Colin would be calling all this throughout the whole show, you know, and then I would get the car football. And then you would physically see him literally just fling back in his chair, put his arms up, as if to say, and then that's it. He can have fun because he's just like, you know, saying, and he's a very humorous guy, and he'd be like,
he'd be on the radio laughing.
He'd be like, Chris, you wearing your G-string, and you know, he'd be making all these jokes, and we'd all be sitting tee-heeing. But anyway, we'd travel all over the world playing this car football, right? And there's a guy, Sam, who's, to be fair, the best driver I've ever seen in my life, and Sam's from here as well. And there's
Northern Irish holding it down.
Oh, really are. And there's another guy, Gordon, Gordy lives in Scotland now, but Gordy's originally from Lisburn. So we were the ones that generally played the car football, and we got to Belfast. So of course we were like, fucking Belfast, because all the time we'd travel all over the world, and you know, we would be whatever city or whatever country we were in, that would be the logo on the side of the car football cars. And obviously Jeremy and Richard and James would be England, so it'd be whoever versus England.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Yeah. we got to here. Of course, we were all ready to go, and Colin's giving it stacks in the ears, winding us all up and all. And Jeremy's about to start. And he's like, oh, hold on. And he gets out and he sort of has to address the audience, and he goes, I just want to tell you something. He's like, we travel all over the world and we play this game and blah 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 blah. And these guys, you know, they be whatever country you're in. And he's like, and I know it says like Northern Ireland on the cars. He's like, but they are actually, all 3 of them are from Northern Ireland, you know. Of course, Northern Irish crowds, being the crowds they are, massive cheer and everything else. And Jeremy's like, yeah, so we're fucked, you know. And then the car he gets, and Bob, it was great. It was great to do a show here at home.
Did you win?
Fucking right, woman. But the only benefit, when I say it's not choreographed, it's not. But sometimes the end result might be. But every now and again, there's a free for all. And funny, the last show, the final show that we did, was in the O2 in London, and it was just chaos. Like Jeremy had said to me the night before, we're having a bite eating and stuff the night before, and he's like, Chris, we'll make sure it's a good game. You know, it's the last ever game of car football, and he's like, I want it to be good, and it was priceless. Like, it was just. I took a head stagger, so I basically had hit him a head on, and we're in.
Do you hit it? Do the cars hit it?
Oh, the cars be wrecked. Well, we're in Moscow one time.
How often do you change the cars?
Well, we'll have spares, put it like that. Yeah, maybe each side will have at least 2 spares, and the mechanics are busy, you know. But it was real funny. We were in Moscow, doing a big show in Moscow. I think it was Peugeot. The Peugeot, not the 106, the slightly newer one, 108. I'm not up in Peugeots, but whatever it was a new 106 shape or a new 106 size. So he turns up to Moscow, and one of the girls is like, "Oh, Peugeot, we're here for your car football cars." And I'm like, "Okay." So I think these brand new cars all roll in, and I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "Has someone told the guys from Peugeot how this
They're not
works?"
getting these back.
Right. So these two mechanics turn up to run the cars all weekend, and it was so funny. They were lovely guys. Obviously, I don't speak Russian, they don't speak English, but they were lovely, lovely guys, really nice guys. And they were in
That's what you think?
Peugeot or Citroen, I can't remember which, but they were in the wee dungarees, and they've got all the gear, and they're obviously repping the brand in Russia and everything. So we're getting close to go time, and I sort of, girl Gemma used to look after this, and I called Gemma, and I was like, "You sure you've told these guys?" Right? And whatever way the game worked that time, I was in Richard Hammond's team. So Richard was like my team captain, if you like, and there was me and another guy. And these wee cars were black, they were brand spanking new, no miles on the clock. We had the two spurs, right?
Do you not have cages or anything in them?
No.
They're just standard cars,
fucking helmet on and douche,
Just
So,
go for it,
yeah.
unreal.
And anyway, I goes out. And now, bear in mind, Richard's on my team. He's my team captain. I think the whistle blew, and I would say 7 or 8 seconds passed before he hit me so hard. He obliterated the front end. Like, he snapped the whole steering, bumper, headlights, bonnet, wings, everything's gone. I basically, at this point, I've learned that I've done it a few years, and I learned to have a radio. So you were asking earlier about the radio. I've got a
emergency radio.
I've got a radio because I know I'm going to need it. So basically, I've got a radio stashed in the door. I pick up the radio. I say, "Get the spare car ready! Get the spare car ready!" And I'm coming, telling the backstage people to open the curtain to let me back in. So I'm coming, and the wheels like, and the curtain opens, and of course, and the guys in Citroen or Peugeot, can't remember which, they're like, "What the fuck?" Like, the car's just fucking in
We
pieces.
can't fix this. Like,
Oh, the car was just like, it was just scrap. Give me a new one. And this was like 7 seconds after the whistle blew. So anyway, they got an eye opener, but we'd actually used Suzuki Swifts. They were sort of purpose built for it, and they were great. And do you know what? Those wee cars took death. I mean, death.
Oh, I had a Suzuki Swift. I put on its roof. I know.
I done that too. And during car football, I done that. So the last game, say Jeremy's gave me a bit of a pep talk. He's like, "Good game, blah blah blah." And normally there's a time limit on it, and our producer Rowley, he would sort of, whenever it's lost its flow, if you like, he would hit the right, you're going to finish in a minute, and that would. But this particular game, it was the last game, the crack was good and everything. Jeremy had the ball, and I went for the ball, and he hit it, and I straight in, and then I thought, fuck it, it's the last game. So I just gave her a clutch kick and spun the wheels up, and he's literally sitting in the car with his foot in the foot brake, hydraulic handbrake, pulled everything, all 4 wheels lock, and I'm literally smoke pouring off the tires of this wee Suzuki, pushing him up the whole length of the O2 into his own goalpost. You know what I mean? And I looked across, and his family are there, and of course all our execs are there, and they're all crying with laughter. And even Jeremy, like, we're less close, and like he's literally being Jeremy, being a funny guy, and he's literally wiping his tear. Well, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And then I later found out one of the mechanics, because I was being a bit rough that game, and one of the mechanics was like, "Ooh, Burgie's going to roll this car if he keeps this up." And literally 5 seconds later, boosh, it's on a roof. They had James May, and whatever happened, they ended up climbing up his quarter panel, and over she went. It's all on YouTube.
We might need to find that.
But it was good. Car football was great. Car football was brilliant.
And how long did
I have to just say, but we always had a bit of a competition between us who was best. And I mean, obviously, I'm going to say it was me, but truth be told, it was always Gordy. Gordy was fucking brilliant at car football.
What were the presenters like? What was
They were great. They were really good. I have to say, they were really good.
Rash, or were they actually a bit of finesse about them?
Driving and stuff? No, they were.
Well, Hammond's had a few incidents there.
He's not so lucky.
He's no fear. He has no fear. Like, Richard has no fear. None, zero fear. And that's what he's literally not afraid of anything, and that's what makes him sort of gun ho, if you like. But that's not a bad thing. That's they're to be fair, all three of them they're all good drivers, a lot better drivers than people may think. And there was one year we used to do this festival in Sydney. And through a contact out there, I'd managed to get Holden and Ford to supply to racing utes. And James and Jeremy were doing that gig along with the Australian team. Richard wasn't there, and anyway, my job was basically bringing out this Holden and getting Jeremy folded into it. And this is a racing Holden with a cage and extended steering column and all this, and like I'm just under 6'2", and Jeremy's a fair bit taller than I am, you know. So it was like trying to origami to get him folded up into this thing, you know. And of course, you have to buckle him up and all that. And he used to love that. Oh, he used to love that because I literally be down on my knees trying to strap him up, and he'd be like, "Stop playing with my balls." And stuff, you know what I mean? And you're like, "Shut the fuck up." You know? But
he is a bit.
It was all a bit of crack.
He's brash, like.
No, it was all a bit of crack. It was great fun. That's saying great memories. But anyway, I got him folded up. Where it was one of the practice days. It was Friday or whatever. Show you festival used to run Saturday, Sunday. And anyway, folded him up in the chute, right, off you go, you know, and off, have a lap around the track. And for our sound engineers, it was a bit of a challenge because it was at Eastern, I always get it mixed up, or it's Eastern or Western Creek, Eastern Creek I think it is, just outside Sydney. And basically they had to figure out a way of getting the comms to work while they were in cars, but running the whole way around the track. So of course the sound people are out putting out, you know, signal amplifiers and all sorts of things to try and make sure they've got coverage of the guys talking while they're going around. But anyway, Jeremy went off and got a bit of a feel for it, and basically this track, the last corner is a big massive sweep in the left hand corner which comes into the sort of start finish straight which runs downhill. So we can't see around the back. We've seen, you know, we can hear Jeremy in our comms, and then we can obviously hear him on the PA system, and the sound guys are trying to testing all this out and all, and he's loving this. He's getting, it's, you know, these utes are, if you ever driven them, but they're basically, you know, these are racing utes. They're the 4,6,500 horse with literally nothing in the back of them, so they're lively is the best way of describing them. But anyway, he's at this point, Jeremy's having a lot of fun. You know, he's only done a couple of laps. Next thing he comes into this last corner, and I'm not kidding you, he must have been in second if not third, and he literally smoked the tires. Like there was a rooster tail as long as you would see at the back of James Dean's car, like going around this corner. I'm standing there with our producer who's very friendly with Jeremy, and we're like, what the fuck's going on? He came out of the corner full hang, just touched the wheel and kicked up a wee bit of dirt, just perfect, and literally started roaring. He's like, I have got to get me one of these. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. He nailed it, you know. So they're better drivers than people give them credit for.
Good at multitasking too, because have you ever tried to properly talk and actually discuss a car while driving it as well?
I have to say, I think very, very highly of all three of them, and I've had an awful lot of fun over the years. And like we used to have our shows, which are a very stressful environment, and then, you know, for them, it had to be rock and roll because they're all very successful guys. You know, they're not short of a few quid, and you know the demands of touring are high. So you have to have some sort of an incentive for them to want to tour the world, if you like. So you know, we were in just normal hotels, nice hotels, but normal. Like they'd be looked after. They'd be helicopter flights and everything else. Not on the BBC's money before everyone kicks off. That was all separate. But yeah, it would be rock and roll for them. You know, it'd be rock and roll, and they had a lot of fun, and you know the parties were great, but a lot of good parties.
Warm food whenever they get back to the hotel. Then
so funny, right? So I'll tell you this. So basically, there's this guy called Mark, right? So some of the crew from Max Power. So the very first year I turned up with Max Power, there's people don't appreciate what goes on behind the scenes of a lot of things, you know, be it concerts or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Live shows are no different. So there's a core crew behind the scenes making everything happen and making everything run and making sure everyone's in their place and blah, blah, blah. But there's this guy, Mark, affectionately known as Big Mark because he's fucking massive, right? And he's been with us for donkey's years. Like he's been with us for a long, long time, and you know the boys know him well, and there's a rapport built up there and everything else. And the incident had not long happened, right? So we were basically a couple of months later, we're at the O2, we're finishing up. This is the party where Jeremy says to me about having a good game of car football. And myself, and there's Richard, and there's Mark, and we're all having a bit of a bow, and Jeremy comes over. We're talking, I can't remember, we're talking whatever, and a waiter comes, right? So a waiter's coming with a platter of food. We're in some lovely restaurant, and Jeremy picks something up off this platter, and he takes a bite of it, you know, and he literally turned around and looked at the guy, and he was like, it's cold. And like literally within a split second, Big Mark turns around and goes, don't fucking hit him. And it was priceless. Like, I mean, we were folded in two. It was, had to be there, but it was just, he laughed his balls off. You know, at this point, you know, what could he do? He thought about it for a minute and then he laughed, but we were buckled, you know. It was, Andy Wilman was there too, actually.
No, because you'd known him for a while at that point, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you know, I wouldn't say we're like best buddies, but, you know, you have to remember those guys and other guys like them. I know Shane Lynch as well, reasonably well, and I've spent a bit of time out in restaurants and stuff with him and different things. And like we went to Nando's once in Belfast. They were here doing a concert, and a few of us went to Nando's. And he had a good friend, Derek, of his, with him from Dublin, and we're sitting in Nando's anyway, trying to eat our food. And I am not kidding you, like I'm not making this up. Literally every 10 or 20 seconds, someone was over looking for a picture, you know.
Right.
And I got to the point where I was like, Jesus, let the guy eat his dinner, you know. But he, no problem. I think Keith Duffy was with us as well. And every single time, oh, no problem, and wiped their mouth and up and took a picture and everything else. And I've been on a few, out for a few meals in London with the boys as well, and it's the same story. And never have I ever seen any of them go, I'll do it when I finish my dinner.
Give them a bit
They've
of
all the time in the world, and I admire anyone that does that. You know, I think.
You've opened up your
Because-
life, really.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
every aspect.
and I think, you know, it's bound to be incredibly demanding. You know, we're sitting in
you're trying to
Nando's.
have something to eat
I'm
and
at the
take
point
it
where
on,
I'm getting cross. Like, fucking leave me alone, let me. You know what I mean? But they have the patience of a saint, you know, and it's a. So from the point of view of the guys, you know, you have to remember they walk down the street and they're getting hounded for pictures and they're getting everything else, and they have to see your face around for a while before they open up to you, I guess is what I'm saying. But that point, I made a bit of a mistake when I first started. I sort of made a point of being polite and saying hello every time I seen them. Never got a reply. This was just at the beginning, you know, but I was a new guy, so I ignored him for a bit, and then we were in Durban, Durban, doing a big thing, and whatever, it was car football, or we went for a couple of years, we done polo. We had these little motorbikes with like an arm on them and a polo thing. A fucking polo arm was deadly. It was on like our mechanics and the people that thought all this stuff up were brilliant, you know. But this thing, there was a chain on it basically to stop, because if the chain broke, this thing would just rotate around at like 150 miles an hour and kill you. Do you know what I mean? Jesus. But anyway, whatever it was, with a good game or whatever, and I'm walking away dressed like a prat, and Jeremy says, "Oh, Chris, brilliant game," and all, you know. And I was like, "Oh, he knows my name," you know. That was kind of the start of it, but. Yeah, I look back on all that stuff, and they really were memories of a lifetime. And there's some funny shit happened during those shows, like some really funny stuff. So so basically, our mechanics, we this crack team of mechanics, and their background was WRC and things, you know, and right back to the Mark II Escort days, you know, and these. One of them was worked with McRae and, you know, Ari Vatanen, and like some of these, they've literally been mechanics for royalty, you know, motorsport royalty. And they have a wonderful ability of being able to fix things without the things to fix it, you know, so that's part and parcel of that kind of job.
Cable ties and tape.
But these guys were also known as the comedy department, because doing that kind of gig or doing that kind of thing it's a high stress environment, you know, and there's a lot of focus required to do what you're doing. You know, basically Topgear Live was more or less, you bought a ticket flat knowing what you were getting. You were seeing the three guys dick around and some fancy driving. It's a simple recipe. But obviously would have a lot of cars hobbled together to get us through. And anyway, these guys were brilliant, because they were always playing practical jokes and arsing around and doing whatever, but like they were next level. I mean, they were next level shit. Like there was gags that lasted for months, you know. But there would be borderline, you know. Some of them would be like, oh, is this gonna go? Like they were bad. Some of them were bad.
Would they mess with the cars or?
Often. So like you'd put your foot in your brake pedal and then have the squirties, you know, basically duct taped underneath the steering column. So every time you hit your brake pedal, your balls were getting soaked, you know.
Oh my god.
They done that on a few of the presenters once or twice as well. May or may not have went down well. But anyway, they were always doing silly shit, you know. But it was brilliant. It was always really, really good crack. And there's a few incidents that spring to mind, but there was one that was just, it was quality. So we're in, I think it was Brisbane or Melbourne, I can't remember which,
I love
we're in
every
Australia.
time it's like, we were in the furthest place
Well,
possible.
I love Australia, and any self-respecting car guy has to love Australia. There's only one country that's probably better than us lot at doing donuts and shredding tires, and it's Australia.
They enjoy it.
Oh man, they are the kings. They really are. Anyway, we're in Melbourne or Brisbane. We're doing this gig. And we're backstage, right? But there was everywhere you went. So we had obviously our crew that travel and set everything up and whatever. And on the 6 months, if you like, before we would arrive, they would obviously employ local fixtures and crew and everything to help with everything out there. And there was this girl, and I can't for the life of me remember her name, but she was stunning, right? She was an absolute gorgeous girl. She was one of the Australian girls working on it. But she was so stuck up, like no matter how much I said, it wasn't me, it was everybody. She just, you know, she was stunning and she knew it, kind of thing. So of course the boys were like, we're gonna fucking fix her wagon.
Right? So these lads from Northern Ireland by any chance?
No, they're not. The mechanics aren't. There's two brothers. Well, there's four of them, but there was two brothers and Bestie, and they were great crack. They were the best of crack, and they're all good mates. But like their gags are next level, you know. So anyway, this girl, they were going to fix her wagon, right? And one day she turned up to work, and it was obviously summertime in Australia, so she's wearing this floaty dress, you know. And I can see the guys. It was always happening in between times. You couldn't do it during a show because you can't do anything that may jeopardize the show running properly. So it's always in rehearsals. There was a lot of rehearsals with Topgear, which we can touch on in a minute. But anyway, basically I seen them at their work. And I was like, what's happening? They're like, oh, we're going to sort your mom out. And I was like, right. And then I was like, what are we doing here? So basically what they done was they had an airline running across the floor, and they'd all taped the floor like it's supposed to be there, right? But they put a hole in it, right? And then we had these wee Fiestas that would do this routine in, and anyway, and these things had limo tent windows, you know, because it's supposed to be driven by robots. There's a big freaking robot with a machine gun hanging outside them. So the windows are full black limo tent. You can't possibly see anything. Anyway, Andy's sitting, the airline's going in the door, you know, this Fiesta, and the door's closed. He's sitting in there like the connector for the airline, right? So I'm told.
I love how detailed these are.
It's next level, I'm telling you. So I'm told, right, go get your woman. So, and they're like, they put an axe in the ground, like, you stand there. And I'm like, all right then. So I go off, do what I'm told, get whatever her name is, bring her out. Like, such and such wants to speak to you. So I come out, stand on the X, which puts her right bang where they needed her to be. So of course Andy's sitting in this Fiesta, hooks up the airline, right? Fucking dress up round her ears like this. I hear she's standing there in her thong and bra, and like we're just like, oh fuck, we didn't know it was gonna work so bad, right?
Oh my god.
So she's went apeshit. I mean, she's fucking went apeshit. Like,
imagine that.
Apeshit. So we're in between crying with laughter and going, fuck, we're in so much trouble.
You're
right?
the guy that looks the worst like in the situation. You're like standing on an X.
on the X.
Right, so she runs off to get the organisers. Everyone's scrambling. You know, we're all like, get the fuck out of here. The mechanics are like, well, we can't go anywhere. This is our home. You know, this is where we have to be here to do our job. So they go off and get Simon. This is the Simon. If Simon ran all the big shows, all Max Power Lives, Topgear's Fast and everything, Simon's the man that makes it all happen. You know, a wonderful guy. Him and his wife Sharon. But anyway, she goes off to get Simon, obviously to go. You'll not believe her. She's off and one. But the guys, so Nobby, one of the, he basically very quickly rattles up this massive sign, right? And they hang this big sign up. So Simon comes out, like Simon's the big boss, you know, and Simon comes out pen in hand because he's been busy doing like awful shit. And he comes out, you know, your woman's trailing behind him. He comes out to give us, like, he comes out to rip us a new one. And we're all like, you know, we don't know where to look. And literally he starts in the boys, like, what have you done, whatever. And he literally went off in a rant. And Nobby just goes like that. And Simon looks up and there's this big massive sign, caution, air blasting may occur in this area. Please do not wear loose clothing.
Please do not what?
Please do not wear like loose clothing. And Simon,
like, please don't walk.
Simon looks at this sign and what can he do? But he fucking roars laughing, you know what I mean? And of course your girl storms off and he's just like, "Yous are bad bastards." And off he goes. So, but that was just one of many, you know, there was many gags that happened, and but there was some fun stuff went down. It really did, you know. But they were never short of. When things were getting tense, they would be the department that would keep things moving and, you know, relax everything a bit and whatever. But there were some funny guys, you know, really are.
You said there was a lot of rehearsals. What was that about?
Yeah, so how should I put it? So basically, we would have we before we would launch a world tour, you would go to most likely NEC. We would take a big haul to NEC and we'd spend maybe a month or so there, coming up with all the routines and sorting them out. Yeah. So it was all generally indoors. Only the festivals were outdoors, and we would have what you call a fast and a slow floor. A bit like you would compare a track to a rally stage, for example. So if you imagine you go to a different venue, the surface would be different. It would be either more grippy or less grippy. So say for talk's sake, you have a 4-minute routine. Say you're doing a 4-minute routine. The difference in like Earl's Court, for example, Earl's Court was always really, really grippy. It's no longer there, but it used to be super grippy versus the NEC. So over a 4-minute sequence, you could be 40, 50, maybe even more seconds out just doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. So if you imagine you're in, you know, the guys were in the Focuses RSs or we're in the M3s or whatever we're driving at the time. And so you're using the full length of the thing. So basically the floor is that grippy. The cars are moving so much faster. So every time we went to a venue, you would load in usually on a Tuesday and then you'd be rehearsing Wednesday, Thursday and Friday for a launch on the Friday evening. So you'd have your first show would be Friday evening, and then you do 2 or 3 Saturday and 2 or 3 Sunday. So basically, yeah, there'd be every single time you turn up for a Topgear gig, you would have the rehearsals because everything was different. Everything had to be changed. The crux of the routine would be the same, but we would maybe have to take a donut out here and take a J-turn out there, and to keep it all on schedule with the sound and the lighting and all the other things, So it was a variance, if you like.
Extremely involved, like.
There's honestly.
It just shows you like the level of details.
The stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and so it's not just like car shows. It's everything, concerts and everything else. I've worked with some guys over the years who are basically backstage crew, and like that's their full time gig, and you can spot them a mile away, especially riggers. Riggers turn on shorts. He's a rigger, always wearing shorts. Always lots of tattoos, some mad hairdo, and you can just spot them a mile away,
Steel boot and big socks.
But great guys, and they're experts in their field, and they know what they're doing, and you see them clambering up in the rig, and you're like, yeah, I hope he's getting paid a lot of money, and they're brilliant. But there's so much goes on behind the scenes. When you go to the SSE or wherever you go to watch something, you don't realise just how many the army of people behind the scenes that have made that load in happen and everything happen.
I always feel like whenever we're working and you've finished your job and you get to the end, you're like, oh, I'm finished, and then they wake up from sleeping on the box and then they start ripping it down.
That's right. There was one guy. We'll refer. His nickname was Swampy. Basically, we had this set that had these stairs that came down. That Naomi, who's Shane Lynch's brother, but Naomi was one of our performers and later a choreographer for Fast. But Naomi used to have this custom-built flamethrower outfit, and I guess the thing would shoot flames, 20 foot in the air kind of thing. These guns that shot flames out. But she would come down these stairs, as part of it was all projected onto the screen. The stairs would open, she would come down, the Porsches would go out on fire and do a thing. But Swampy, when he was building everything back at the staging company, he basically built himself like a secret room. So underneath these steps, he had like a secret room. And of course, there's only a few of us knew about it. None of the bosses knew about it. But he fucking sofa, beer fridge, hammock, everything built in underneath the stage. It was class. And he would literally be in there during a show, like the noise and everything else. But just like you say, and then come the 11th hour, boom, up
straight out from behind the stairs. Where's he been?
But no, it's great. Those guys are great, and the work they do is fantastic.
You were speaking of Fast, so after that, was it straight into Fast? The same guys then, or
to a degree? So basically, we were in. I remember when I first knew about Fast, we were in Warsaw. We played in the National Stadium in Poland with Topgear a few times. That was funny. I think the first year. I get this number right. It was either 67 or 76,000 people in one sitting. It was a lot of people, and I remember because obviously it's a big arena, so sort of that arena shape, and we used to have most of them would have 4 entrance points. So if you imagine we have a door where we're going in, doing a thing, coming out, and it'd all be curtained off, blackout curtains and everything. And before show, I was like, if I remember rightly, it was only one big show, so it wasn't like all weekend. It was just one big massive hit. And I decided to sort of have a peek up. You could do that. You could go up and sort of peek through the curtain. Nobody'd ever see, people. Yeah. So I peeked out and sort of looked around. I was like, "Jeez, that's a lot of people," And I was like, a few of us looked out the curtain and we turned around, walked around, and we met Jeremy Richard James and a guy Chris who's the tour director. And I sort of said to them jokingly, I was like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And they're like, oh, and off they went. They, of course, peeked out the curtain, and literally I stood to see the reaction. And they all turned around, all three fucking head down, chin in. They were shitting themselves. And we later found out, in the green room before the show, they were like, that's a lot of people. They were genuinely, and they're masters of what they do. Like, they really are, So, anyway, so that particular gig, I was pulled to one side, and I was told that there's a... everything has its lifespan, everything has its shelf life. There's only so long you can do it for. And, Topgear Live had been on the go for a while, so it was inevitable it was going to wind up soon. This is pre-incident. And, so one of my bosses pulled me to one side, said, look, we're doing a thing. It's right up your street. You'd be literally the perfect guy for it. Grew up with the culture and everything else. I can't tell you what it is, but this is what we're doing, so just so you know, there's something in the pipeline. And that was 5.5 years before we got signed off. That's how long it took to get everything over the line with Fast. So, as you can imagine, with such a big brand and everything else, Universal obviously were super protective, and rightly so. So it took an awful lot of work. And during that time, there was more, let's say, 4 people really behind the scenes that were working on it, of which I was one of. So yeah, we had an awful lot of work to do, and we were so close. Like Rolly kept flying out to LA, and he'd be doing meetings and presentations with boards of directors and shareholders and all this stuff, and I get a phone call like at midnight on a Friday night, I'm about to go and meet these guys, and like Rolly's great, I think the world of him, but he'd be meeting execs and stuff, and he'd be nervous, rightly so, because there's a lot hinging on this, So I'd be like, oh, you got this, and it'll be fine, and he would do a great job, as he always does. And anyway, after many trips and many meetings,
You got signed off?
I remember getting the phone call. I was like, "Shit! Now we've actually got to do all this shit." But yeah. I was like, "How the fuck are we gonna do this?" We've been waffling for you, but it was good. Yeah, I mean, it was good. It was a massive thing. And to be fair, I kind of enjoyed the building of it. I enjoyed the building of it. We launched in the O2 in London and with Vin Diesel over and everything for it, and we done the first show. And I have to say, we done the first show, and everyone done a great job. And when it was over, I kind of felt right, box tick. I literally, in my head, I sort of had this mental book. It was like, job done. Do you know what I mean? Because up until that point, my role, if you like, was to get all the vehicles. There was 42 vehicles, so I had to find them, get them built, and get sorted, all within a budget. So I had to do that, and then at the same time, it was obviously, you need to get drivers, and how you're going to get them, and how you're going to get them trained and all. And like, I worked in London Monday to Friday, and literally, come Thursday, Simon and Rolly would be standing behind me poking me, like, going, what's happening to the drivers? What's happening to the drivers? And I'd be like, look, will you just leave me alone? I've got all these cars to get, and, have you tried getting wheels for Honda Civics that are 30 years old? Do you know what I mean? It was just like, so I had my hands full.
The cars as well. I remember actually you were doing one. I wish I went to that one in Belfast. It wasn't Belfast, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did. We got it again.
I wish I went. But did you have the cars in from the movies? Is that
we had a few, yeah. So I flew out to LA a few times, out to Dennis McCarthy, who owns the picture vehicles out there. And Dennis supplies all the cars, not just for Fast, but mostly, well, not all of them, but a lot of big productions in the States and things, or globally. So yeah, I sort of started annoying Dennis's head early on in the thing, and built up a bit of a rapport with him, and then eventually out to LA to meet him and get a chat and whatever. So yeah, we had a few. We did the ramp car, or the flip car. We had the Murcielago.
You have the Civics from the first one?
The Civics, we didn't have the original Civics, but
not the original, but you had the.
Oh yeah, well, we had them in the show. And a real nice story about them, actually.
The best cars from I actually still think they're the best cars.
Obviously, we needed these Civics,
You love those Civics, like.
Yeah. I do, like.
You have to draw the line at some point. So I mean, if we were being like super anal about it, I would have wanted left-hand drive Civics, but you can only get them in America, and you can't get them. So it was like, right, just fucking nobody's going to know. Just get right-hand drive ones; it'll be fine. Just make them look. Right. So we got the cars, which was actually quite hard, because as you know.
There's all of them left.
Yeah, there is. So eventually gathered up the cars, and then of course it's get the kit. And I mean, I spent weeks. I am not kidding. I spent weeks. Emails, phone calls, in amongst trying to get wheels and things that have never been produced for the last 20 years and whatever.
Boys off Gumtree. Like,
yeah. Do you know? And it's just
Tom
funny.
might be able to help you out with that. He likes it. I'll buy and sell.
In the very beginning, the whole thing was wrapped up. Like, I don't know how many NDA, non-disclosures I signed. Like, and basically it was the point where if I mentioned the word Fast and Furious, I was fucking going to jail. Do you know what I mean? It was just, there was so much red tape involved. And I was started to buy cars, and I couldn't tell people what I was buying cars for.
Like, and then, why do you want this?
And like the Supra, I bought the Supra, so the Supra was going to be my baby. There was nobody was getting that car but me. That was my thing, right? And I bought a silver non-turbo auto, but it was mint. The car was mint, and that's what I wanted, because I didn't want to buy it. I wanted to start with and then make her what she's going to be, which is obviously in keeping with the movie and everything else.
I want to know what this budget was.
Well, I blew the shit out of it on the Super.
I want to know what this budget was.
But anyway, so I was buying these cars, and I couldn't tell people initially what, and I was having to get the payment from some fucking random company or whatever, because we couldn't obviously have Fast and Furious Live Limited, because it's a bit of a giveaway. But I mean, there was a lot of stuff to get out. But anyway, I'm trying to find the kits for the Civics, and I don't quite know how I got on it, but I stumbled across VIS Racing in LA, and I phone these guys, phone everybody else as well. I felt like, you remember that old Yellow Pages ad? That's what I was like. So I phoned, and this guy answered the phone and told him who it was, and by this stage I could talk about it, so it was like, this is what I'm doing, and blah blah blah, and I need these kits, and I could sort of hear the heart playing in the background, as I'm telling this guy all this. And he's like, oh, my name's Tack. And he says, I supplied all the kits for the original cars in the movie. And I was like, what? And he was like, I done it. And I was like, oh, can you help? And he was like, yeah. I was like, excellent. And I was sort of waiting for what he was like, I can do it. And I was like, what's the catch? Do you know what I mean? He was like, no, it sounds good, I can do that. And I was like, oh, okay, there's my email address, see you soon. So that was it. I got off the phone and was like, I need to go to LA. And they're like, right, book another flight then. So over to LA, got to the place. And what had happened in between the week or so it took me to get out to see him, he discovered that the molds that he used, they were quite, if I remember this right, there was basically an S14 back bumper that was modified for a Honda Civic. It wasn't actually a Honda Civic bumper. They were very crafty like that because they made the cars all with wee tweaks so to stop people just ripping it off. And he had dug out the molds, but the molds were destroyed. They were so old. So of course he brings me out, and they did a wonderful facility in LA, basically a big massive factory where they were obviously warehousing, shipping and all that, but they did a whole section of it where they were producing all this stuff, and they've got the big autoclaves and everything, and this wee red Honda Civic sitting there. And I was like, he says the molds were broke, so I had to buy a Honda Civic to make your stuff. And I was like, oh, geez, thanks. I was like, that's great. He was totally into the whole thing, and ended up I got a lot of stuff off him. So he done a lot of things for us.
Really?
So he done a lot. But
do they do like just for movies, or do they?
No. They're just
just car guys.
Yeah. And I got quite a few bits off him. Like the bonnet on the Supra was it was carbon fiber. Obviously we had to paint it, but it was a genuine carbon fiber, and the quality of it was first class. I have to say it was really, really high quality, and everything he supplied was great. And then we done the GTR, which was. I'll not say the name, but it was the one from was 7, I think, the blue one. Paul Walker drove in the end with the mad kit.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've ever priced one of them. Holy shit balls. So our budget wasn't that big, so I had to find a way of doing that, and he found a way. And long story short, the guy who actually makes the proper one done it as a homer for me, like in Japan, and then I had to go to America and then over to us, and So it was great, it was a real, it was an adventure building it all, and once, I remember the last car I bought was S2000 donor car, and I got that from Snetterton. We were getting company vehicles, but they weren't in at the time. And Simon, the whole way through all this journey, Simon's been there somewhere, and Simon had this wee Corsa van. So I'm driving around like more or less not an open checkbook, but I have a shitload of money to spend buying all these cars, and this wee clapped out Corsa van. But I loved the wee Corsa van, it was class. But I went all the way up from London up to Snetterton, and I got done a deal with a guy for a rolling chassis for an S2000, and that was the last car. And basically I'd sort of give them a rough, I was like, I'll buy the last car on such and such a date. And boom, we were late starting, and I got it for like literally a day to spare. Last car bought, sorted, and that included all the stuff coming from America. There was a lot of stuff to come from America.
Was that the S2K out of the first one?
Too Fast and Furious, second one.
Oh, second.
So yeah.
Did Jesse's?
Jetta didn't make the cut. It's like, what are we going to do with that? There's no brakes. We'll not use it.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did it have brakes?
So no, Jetta didn't make the cut. But the S2000 was the last one. But there was so much work, and there were so many people involved, and it was super stressful. And don't get me wrong, glad it happened, and I'm very proud of everyone that was involved in it and everything else. But sadly, it wound up a bit earlier than it should have.
How long was the run?
We ran for I think 7 months, but that's not including rehearsals. So we had a lot of rehearsals, and the rehearsals were great because we basically wanted somewhere private and somewhere where we could do our thing, and we ended up doing a deal with the MOD, and we got onto a live army base, Kendrew. And that was class because you were coming into work every day, and there was like a tank or Apaches flying about, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Of course, there's a runway, and the guy who we were dealing with, Richard, lovely guy, and I was like, oh, let's crack with the runway then. He's like, no. But, and he's like, no. And then eventually that sort of was like, as long as I don't hear about it. So I was like, right, dead on. See you down the runway, And that's actually where the guys do VMAX. They moved it, so VMAX is actually there now, so that's how big the runway is, and we had a lot of fun on that runway, I can tell you. But it was great. So we sort of, and once I got the cars bought and everything, it was concentrating the drivers and figure out how to get that. And so we did a 16-week training stroke rehearsals, if you like. So 16 weeks, basically Monday to Friday.
And was it mainly just in the UK, that one?
That was just the rehearsal. So this before
no,
we
I mean,
launched.
sorry, the actual.
No. It was we only done London. We opened in the O2, and then that was it. We done. Then we eventually came back, and we done like Liverpool, Belfast. Newcastle, Manchester, Belfast, something like that. Yeah. But we were off into Europe and everything, and then in Paris for the last one. Yeah, so we wound up in Paris, the Accor Arena in Paris.
I always remember that story you told me about the tires. You had to get custom tires.
Oh, that was a nightmare, right? So this guy Rolly, his good friend, he won't mind me saying this because I've said it to his face often enough. he would basically go to these meetings, and we'd be like, yeah, we can do that. And then like he flew off to LA and he got to see a preview of 8, you know, before it was even finished in the edit. He'd seen it, you know, but I mean he's put in a room, no phones, no, you know, locked in a room basically with an exec going, watch this. So he's went and seen 8 before like it's even finished. They hadn't finished the edit. He comes back and he's like, beep beep on the phone. He's like, come in and see me. And he beep beep Simon, come in and see me. So me and Simon sitting down there and he goes, right, so I've seen the movie and you know we need to add the movie in our show because by the time we launch, you know, the movie will be out and blah blah blah. Okay. And he's like, so right, the scene we're going to do, there's this submarine, and I'm sitting looking at Simon. And he's like, I want the submarine to come out of the floor, and I want this to happen. And I'm like, for fuck's sake. And you know what I mean? And then...
So no civics.
The civics boxed off. We've done that. We'd rattle through all these things, you know what I mean?
And now we have a submarine.
Yeah, and I'm like...
Did you have the world's longest
Because
runway?
I know how this works. I know I have to leave that office now and go to Simon's office. And what actually happened that day, right? So he goes on and he was having a bad day. He was a bit grumpy. So he's quite serious about the whole thing. And he's like, I want the submarine to do this. And I want the rocket to fly. And I want the Lamborghini. And I want the snowmobiles all night.
And you're like, you do realise we're doing this.
No, you don't. You don't say anything. You just go, yep, And then we got out and we walked into Simon's office. And I remember basically Simon had his own wee office and my desk was at the back of it. But anyway, we walked and sat in Simon's office and two of us looked at each other and literally burst out laughing. We were just like, fucking hey, what's he smoking? Do you know what I mean? So we were like, how the fuck are we going to make a submarine that works? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that was just one of many hurdles. And you touched on the tires, so part of the show
projector in the end, was it?
So basically what we had was most shows you project onto a background and you might have some funky lights on the floor and that's about the height of it, but we were taking things next level. So first time ever this was going to happen. There was a really famous, I can't remember what the occasion was, but there was a famous thing whenever it was either Big Ben or the Houses of Parliament or Buckingham Palace, something was projected onto.
Yeah.
And it was done it was amazing. It was really, really impressive. Of course, he'd seen that, so that's where it opens this can of worms. And he decided, right, what we're going to do is we're going to project onto the set and also the floor, and we're going to have it all stitched in. So if you imagine in the truck heist scene, the floor and the set are moving. So basically, the whole thing's moving. And like in the Tokyo drift scene, the guys would drift around and then they would go up a floor. You know, so you're eventually ending up as per the movie. You know, top of the car park. But yeah, the problem with this was you have to project the floor. Black tires leave marks, you know, so obviously you go out and do a thing and it washes out the projection, you can't see it because eventually the floor will just be covered in black marks. So I'm sitting in this board meeting, right? And I've just flew in or whatever, it's a Monday and I'm tired and anyway, because God love my wife, like I was going home and basically either falling asleep or working the whole weekend. I was only home the weekends, but anyway, I'm sitting there anyway in this board meeting and there's a discussion around this and he's like, right, well, we'll have to get no marking tires. And I swear my head hit the desk. And I just like, for fuck's sake. And I put my hand up, you know, and I'm like, you know, there's a reason my tires are black. Do you know what I mean? And he's like, why? And we got into it. And he's like, well, you just have to find tires that don't mark. He says, I've seen them on a forklift before. And off he walks. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, so
He's got a good point.
I've spent years working with I've spent years working with tire companies, right? And of course I hit the phone and you know some of them, I'll not mention names, but some of them laughed hung up on me. Some of them were like, well, we could probably do that, but it would cost so much, we're not interested, and blah blah blah. And anyway, I phoned Nankang and they were like, come and have the meeting, and I went and had the meeting and I walked outside. And the guys in Nankang won't mind me saying this, but I literally looked at Rolly and I was like, there's more fucking chance of me making these tires than them, right? So we got in the van and pissed off. Or no, by this stage of the Hilux, I had a left-hand drive Hilux. Thank you, Toyota. And I loved it because a lot of the stuff that was coming from America, well, all the stuff from America was left-hand drive. So everyone couldn't figure out, because we'd also done a deal with Mitsubishi and we had these new Mitsubishi trucks. But I wanted my Hilux, and everyone was like, why are you driving around in that left-hand drive Hilux? Belgian registered and everything, all around London. And of course, the mechanics, they're like, Burnsy's not so slow. And they're like, well, what's he doing? He's like, he's getting used to spend as much seat time as possible on the left-hand drive. Yeah, so, but anyway, we headed off back to London, got a phone call a couple of days later from the guy that owns Nankang in Taiwan, his daughter, Janet.
Jesus.
She phones up, was like, we've got some tires, what's your email address? And I'm like, okay, so send her my email address and fucking boom, video links come over and I'm watching these videos going, they just got a drift car, someone they knew, they got a drift car, bit of concrete, fire these tires on, he's sliding around, smoking the tubes everywhere, I'm looking at the ground going, there's no black marks. This is interesting. I was back on email, yeah, that looks good, you know, can you get me a sample? So whoever, whatever courier company, anyway, a couple of days later, I'm standing there with 4 tires. I wanted to make sure they worked, so we had this rear-wheel drive R35 GTR. She could smoke the tubes, so I was like, get them on that thing. I ordered the size for the GTR, and we booked a place to go and test it, and they worked really, really well. What they actually done was almost clean it, because rather than leaving a black mark, they left no mark, or if you like, it was almost like an eraser. Pencil.
Do you know how that works, or?
I do. I'll not get into it because it's all their copyright and everything else. But it was the first time it's ever happened
So
in the
explain
world.
first of all, why it leaves. A little
So
basically, it just comes off and then.
I feel like I should have done homework now for this, because I knew all this.
Well,
very
I'm
much
interested
at the
in
time,
it. Like, I don't think I asked you that the first time.
There's a component in tires, carbon black, I think it's called, and it's an important component, and it adds durability and everything else.
Right.
So it's the thing that makes them last. If they didn't have this, they would basically be soft and it'd last no time at all. And because of it, it keeps the pigments black. It's just tires are black, and that's all there is to it. And obviously, we've seen over recent years companies that put a compound in it that let it emit different coloured smoke.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever figured out how to do without leaving marks. So the engineering prowess that they've basically come up with eventually could lead to tires that are coloured and everything else that aren't going to leave any marks, because what they can really do is tweak what they've done. And I mean, I spoke to everyone. Like, I'm not mentioning names, but I spoke to everyone. I mean, every tire company you could think of, I called.
And they just didn't even.
Just didn't even entertain it, like.
Ninkang's not one of the bigger ones.
It's not, but you know what?
And that's probably why.
That's exactly why, because they were small enough to want to have a go at it, if you know what I mean. And like, they done something with some.
Still got the passion for it.
Yeah,
as well,
yeah, very, very much.
It's
very much.
Pencil
like,
pushers,
in, like car scene, like people say Ninkang or ditch finders, and like they're awful, but they're like they can make a non-marking tire, and it's like, I showed you.
But like any company, they've got their high end stuff too. You know what I mean? Obviously, you get what you pay for, But they're very capable of making good stuff as well.
Surely tires are tires, realistically. Like
No, definitely not.
Not these
What do you drive?
A Civic green.
That'd be in your case, but if you had like an M3 or something, you know what I mean? No, they're very much not. They're very much not. Like, one thing I maintain is good tires. I'm never done telling my dad this. He buys second hand tires. And like, I drive his car every day. And the last time I drove his car, and I put it over the hedge, and then I discovered his tires.
Well,
like
I definitely
15
know
years
they
out
get
of
a
date.
different speed, but what I mean is, like, they can make a good tire. They're choosing to make cheaper tires to sell into the cheaper market, realistically.
Yeah, but it's a guy I know who's a car dealer and has been all his life. He doesn't sell anything over $5,000. And I remember me asking him one day when I was a kid. I was like, and he's like, Chris, he says, there's more people running around with $5,000 to spend on a car than there is $50,000 a car. So he sells volume rather than and I guess that's why any company does what they do.
Absolutely,
focus on. So, but yeah, they done a great job when they done these tires, and like, I basically done a.
So the tire itself is still black, though, yeah.
If you put it, you would think it is, but if you put it beside a traditional tire, you would see it's just not quite black.
Okay.
It was black, but not black. It was like a grey black, if you know what I mean, to look at. So you couldn't really tell without. And then obviously there was a thing because it had all the markings on the sidewalls and everything else per normal.
Like smoking and everything. Like,
oh yeah, it did. The first
need the smoke, I suppose, definitely.
You do, but the first batch there was the smoke that came off him wasn't great, and that basically, I guess I was driving my mask. Do you know what I mean? Because like cut the eyes out or whatever they done. So they tweaked the compounds and tweaked things a bit, and then eventually we got it and had it nailed. But fair play, they done a great job.
Did they end up selling that tire, Brady?
They can't. It's not obviously not for road use. So it's to get it to the point where it would be suitable for the road would require millions of. But I mean, they've copyrighted and everything else. They've got it. They've got locked in. And
so if there ever is a time for it,
we have
it. It is a bit of an exclusive market. Somebody's like,
that's it. And like, basically, they have the capability now to produce a tire in any different color or whatever. And I have to say they've been great about it, and like, I'm still in touch with them to this day. Like anything, as we touched on at the very beginning, car culture, everyone stays friends.
Well, you 20 years ago, you drifted around that tree. You might want to not have left the black mark.
It's actually more than 20 years ago. It would be 20.
I'm just saying 20 years to
help. But I'm just still thinking, fuck, I'm old, but anyway, yeah. But yeah, so and the other thing, obviously, with drifting being so popular and everything, finding venues. So all of a sudden, if you can rock up to a venue and see them, it doesn't make works. Yeah, so
absolutely. Well, right enough, the guys at Alt Race in Poland, they have to clean theirs off every single time,
which isn't always a great success.
Yeah.
I've stood there with the power washer and it doesn't always work.
Outside, like.
What are you talking about?
No, sorry.
Speaking of outside, you arrived in a van today.
Fucking really did.
What's that all about?
Well, you know what happens when I get a car anywhere near you. Do a donut.
Yeah, because you have an.
You kind of have to after your record of what you do. You can't just like, I can't do it.
What is like? Why are you surprised that I say this?
The last time I was anywhere near you in my car, we were at
We should probably explain how we know each other, how we first met.
Okay, then you start that.
Well, it was we were down doing the Sperry Wheels shoot for my car and Ryan's car, and we was right at the end of the shoot, wasn't it? And we were just doing a couple of runs, very gently, may I add, up and down the up and down the runway.
Yeah.
And like I was just casually stopped to the side. We were finished, and this Hylian comes in and another M3. Now there's 3 of us, and he just starts doing hoops around my M3.
Why were you stopped at him?
No, I think that was that before or was it after? I don't remember now.
Do you want to tell everyone why you were stopped?
I may have exploded both my back tires,
that's
delaminated
very,
them.
very
And
common.
what tires were they?
Toyo Proxy.
Were they not cups?
Cups, yeah.
Michelin cups, like the really dear ones.
Oh no, yeah, they were. They're Michelin cups, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, we're at...
They delaminated. I still don't understand to this day why they delaminated.
because they're track-orientated tires, so
sure
they're
they do.
softer compound.
Yeah, well, they're
So basically, when
made
you
for heat.
Yeah, when you get the heat into them, doing what you're doing, just the delaminate, because they're like super grippy.
I just remember doing
I just remember you sliding past me with a big chunk of rubber flying up there.
I
going,
just
"Oh."
did. I did a drift from one side.
And then it
to
made
the
me
other.
laugh whenever you told me they were only like 2 weeks old or something.
Actually, genuinely, were about 2 weeks old.
Yeah, so
Then Ryan very kindly lent me his wheels.
I had
go
to
home.
screw them on to get you home again. I was so obviously I've known Ryan and the guys down there for many years, and I seen on your social or someone's social you were at something. So I texted Ryan. I was like, "What's going on there?" And he's like, "Oh, we're doing a photo shoot." He's like, "Sure, pop down if you're." And I was like, "Oh, nice summer evening." And
Runs
to
to the M3.
I'll finish my dinner. I'll take a wee nip down. No problem. So off I went, and as you say, you were going up and down the runway. At that time, quite slowly, we were tracking vehicle, doing your shots and all, which it was a really cool shoot. Your car and Ryan's car, and I just got mine. And you were trying to do donuts, and
Still trying definitely.
yeah, so I decided before I drove there, I just like to say, before I drove there, I spent the 20-25 minutes it took me to get there going,
Talking to yourself like
be a good boy, be a good boy,
You're
be a
going to
good
do
boy.
it, like.
Oh, well, I really
Can you
wasn't.
teach me how to do that?
I really wasn't. I really wasn't. You were going up and down, and then you two started arsing around, and I'm standing there with Neville, who's obviously now a colleague, and I'm standing sitting on the wee wall watching you. Neville was like, "Oh, yeah, and I go, and he's like, "You going to go?" And I was like, "Serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah." I get in, so I said, "Fucking traction off, boosh out on the runway." So you done your thing, and I, no matter how hard I tried, I was like, right, fuck it. So I just went in and done a few circles around you, which was quite funny.
They were pretty damn close. It
I wasn't that
amused
close.
me.
I can go closer, but I watched your face and I was like, I better not go closer. So it wasn't that close. There was, maybe that much in it, but I can go that close if needs be, the four corners. But
It was very
your
impressive.
face was getting less and less impressive every time.
Who is this
We
guy?
had no.
I tell you, each other this point.
No.
Well, we knew of each other, but we hadn't met.
Oh, fair enough. And you're like,
So he's literally standing there going, "Who's this?"
Who is this
He
guy?
literally, right, the car was stopped in the middle of the runway, right? And he literally just came in and just went into a drift around my car with us standing beside my car.
We
and
never
I was
even
just
seen
like,
the car before. Like,
We did just-
this
it
guy
just-
I just got it.
You're on
didn't
this
I?
side.
it literally just appeared. And I was like, what? And then I'm pretty sure someone went, "That's the stick."
That didn't happen. I'm not, for the record. But yeah. And then did you ever hear the? So yeah, I done a few circles around you, and they were perfect circles. But did you ever hear the story of that? No.
No, you actually, I heard there was
This
a bit
is
of a commotion.
priceless, right? This
We
is
picked up
priceless.
some tire marks, exploded tire.
We did, and then eventually we got yours bolted on. You went home, and I went home, and all was well with the world. But then 2 days later, I get this message from Ryan, and it's basically like, "F you," and I'm like, "Oh, it's a bit rash." I said, "What have I done?" Do you know what I mean? And I text him back, "What's up?" And he's like, "We got in trouble." He says, "I had to go and buy a load of brushes, and we spent the day trying to scroll." I was like, "Well, hang on a minute now." I says, "I wasn't the only guilty party," and I said, "Do you know what I mean? Let's just clarify that." And he goes, No, you don't get it." And I'm like, "Get what?" And it was a very important, well, not say who it was, but there was a very important visitor flying into this particular airport. And royalty, actually. And basically the airport were freaking out about getting these marks off the runway, which I would like to just clarify, I wasn't solely responsible for.
There
Okay?
wasn't
Ryan was doing a
on a
few-
runway.
Well, I was kind of just over at the side of the runway, really. I mean,
Ryan was doing a few too, was he not? Like, it was all of us.
You know I work for Ryan now, so I have to be careful.
No, but
Well, that was me trying to like defend there. That was me trying to be like, it was him.
All right, Ryan. So anyway, I gave messages and blah blah blah, and I spent a day obviously it didn't work out. You're never runway Michelin's. That's not coming up. Do you know what I mean? So that an important visitor coming, and
Who was it?
It was a royal figure.
Obviously, someone who was really impressed.
I really want to know who it was.
They were like,
Sure that doesn't matter.
The funny bit of what happened is basically the pilot came flying in the helicopter, sees a landing circle, and put the chopper right down, bang in the middle of the circles.
Really?
He assumed that it was actually
everyone
painted.
was standing up the runway going, what's he at?
Here, can I just say, because I can't do a perfect circle, so that was definitely
Well, that bit may not have been me, but yeah, there was that.
Mine looked like the circle.
Apparently, I didn't see it. Obviously, I wasn't there, but yeah, the guys were, and seemingly he just swooped in the chopper. And, there's the
Probably-
landing circle.
that's it.
We'll set her down there. Just drop her
Probably
right,
the
right
H
in the
that you
middle.
did in the middle of it.
Is it weird? It's in black paint, not white these times.
I have to say, one of the guys, Ben and work there, he really obviously knew he was coming here today, and he played, your video from that night or whatever. And I actually forgot that because Adam's done a really funny voiceover in that. You can link it up or whatever. But Adam mentions about the, not getting used to the runway again. It's very funny. I was giggling coming up the road thinking about it. But
So did you do any more trouble over that, or was that okay? Was everything forgiven in the end, or
by who?
the guy that owns the runway?
He doesn't know who it was.
No,
I really hope he doesn't listen to that.
Does he not know who did it? Does he not know who did it?
I was actually speaking to him today, but that's a different
Jeez.
story.
Oh Jesus!
You ever heard of
So
ILB?
look into
Don't
this
it?
camera.
That was fun. And funny, that's the old one and only time I've ever.
So that's why you didn't drive your M3 up here.
I didn't, because I knew rightly he was going to come here. That's off the public highway, man, and I know.
He's watched all
Well,
the
I've got
videos
mine.
I
of
might be
what
old,
happens,
but I'm a big child at heart, and you guys, I'm not very good with peer pressure, and
I've
you
got
know.
mine sitting out there.
I'll smoke the tires off years ago, which.
Needs new tires anyway.
Probably not much left on them. Like,
Needs new tires
no,
anyway.
it's I knew it was a bad idea, so I was like, I'm bringing my van because that means I can't do anything. So I brought my van.
Oh,
It's not my van, it's Rand's van, but I brought my van.
Do you like a Civic or a Clio?
Well, actually, the training cars were fast for Civics, and those we this is funny, and people will be able to relate from over here. So during the whole training car thing, it was like, there's your budget. It's like, right, and then like, how many? You suppose you're going to buy M3s? You love BMs. And I was like, well, I'm buying 2. I was like, I need more money than this. Do you know what I mean? They're like, that's your lot. So I was like, fuck's sake, what am I going to buy? And I had to think, and then I was like, right, the modern day twin cam. Which obviously,
IS200.
boom. So I said to the mechanics, I need to buy an IS200, and literally they laughed their balls off. They were like, he's a fucking dickhead. So anyway,
They've never clearly been
right,
Ireland,
so
like,
exactly.
royalty
So
on.
of course, I'm getting laughed at directors and producers, and everyone was like, he's so Irish, he wants to buy a twin or an IS200, So I'm like, well, I haven't got any more money to buy anything else. I need IS200, so like, right, we'll go get one then. So I bought one, which was affectionately named Betty. And I got it, and I remember I was going to, I was at Farnham Airfield. We're looking at venues to do the training, and that's where Lewis parks his jet. And anyway, all the execs were out from the airport, so I'm trying to, jazz them up about the whole thing. I've given them I had a whole spiel down to Fine Art with the stage. I was like, do you want a passenger run? So in they get, and I'm hammering around this bloody, I was like shell grip parts of it, but I'm in an S200, standard S200, giving it absolute death. I mean, death.
It's going nowhere.
Yeah, they haven't got a lot of poke, let's face it, but they're a great car. But anyway, I'm giving this thing death, and I do a couple of runs, and I pull up, and Andy, our mechanic, I've worked with Andy for years. He knows me to a fine art. Like, he built the Supra and everything, and he wouldn't even let me sit in it until, like, to adjust the seat or nothing. I wasn't allowed to sit in it until he was happy with it, and like the minute I got in it, that car was more or less built for me, and it was literally like putting on a tailored seat, everything bang on position, so great mechanic. But yeah, anyway, I pulled up beside Andy, and he leans in the window, and he's like, Burnton, and again, he goes, how long's that oil light been on for? And I'm like, oh shit. So with a big 6-car transporter there, and put it in the back, and I was going to Garage D. So I'm sure many people know Garage D. Yes, Julian Smith, known Julian for a lifetime, so he was doing bits and pieces for me. Rocks up at Garage D, lovely big 6-car transporter Actros, that usually does F1 work. But anyway, I roll up, pull the door down. Julian's like, oh, Alexis, class, they're great then, you'll never blow one of them up. I was like, well, funny story, Julian, you'll not believe it. Anyway, the boys, the mechanics, say they were very talented guys, and they pulled it apart, and they found a bit of a flaw in the oil pickup. So basically, fine food and donuts and stuff, but when you get a bit of speed on the standard cars, you're starving yourself of oil, so they modified the baffles and everything in the sump, and we put on smaller tires and give it as much camber as we could, and they'd done their adjustments, and they were struggling to spin both ways all the time, so dropped the ATF fluid out, or dropped the diff fluid out and replaced it with ATF, lighter oil, helps it lock up and things. And basically they done the tweaks to the car and we got it working. Oh, she was the yoke.
CBR,
big sticker in the back window, Buckfast.
James was a Buckfast today.
But no,
spoiler on the back.
but anyway, we ended up with Tenel, and
As you do.
I loved it. And do you know what it was? As the whole thing went on, everybody grew to love these cars. They were like the unsung heroes, they really were. And then it was time, we'd got all our show cars, but see, getting everyone out of the Lexus into the actual show cars, was like, oh, don't drive it in case of damage it or something. I was like, we're rehearsing the Lexuses again. Those cars got death, and I remember we were on the floor in the O2 on the opening night, and basically this stage were sold, but we kept two because we were going to do like press things and whatever, and we didn't want to break the cars, so we used the Lexus. And again, like literally the night of our opening, an hour or two before the doors open to get everyone in, Lexus out smoking around the O2, and they're heroes. They were heroes. And do you know what? Most of them are still on the go today.
They're probably still going.
A lot of the drift schools, I know the one at Rockingham and stuff, they picked up a few of them and they're still going, because I know a few people that drive them, but they're still going. Like, and those cars were Monday to
Toyota.
I talked Andy Cooper from RMS. I talked Andy into getting one, and I swear to God, I got bombarded with text messages for about a solid month going, this thing's shit, this thing's slow, this thing's... I was like, you're not doing it right. Obviously Andy's a great driver, but anyway, he sold his, he got fed up, and I was like, no, they don't do that. That's not what they're for. They're for doing circles.
That's it,
yeah, you're never going to hook third or fourth in this. Well, maybe you maybe get third, but you're certainly not going to smoke the tubes in fourth. Definitely not. But great cars.
That's crazy. So I wanted to actually talk about this at the start, but stunt car driver, you were recently in, what was it, 6 Underground?
6 Underground, yeah. So we'll put fast in the we'll fold the page over. So yeah, it was all done and dusted.
Well, fast is much the same as Topgear.
It was different.
Traveling around.
Yeah, it was the same idea. Turn the world with an arena show. Bit different because it was very much. It was very regulated, whereas parts of Top Gear Live were a bit more freestyle, if you know what I mean. As I mentioned before, we had to do all the adjustments, and then we would have a lot of supercars, and so every venue would have new supercars, and myself and a few other guys would get those gathered up. So you'd always something to look forward to. You'd always something different. There was a variance to every show, and it was different. Whereas Fast was very much Groundhog Day. It was like literally got to the point where it was like, where are we? You'd literally be in an arena and forget what city you're in, kind of thing. And I don't mean that in any sort of pompous way. It was just you were traveling in and out every week. It was very sort of hard to you forget. Your mind would be focused on other things. So it was different. And as I say, for me, when we finished in the O2, everything, the cars, it works. The mechanics done a great job. Everyone had done a great job. Absolutely everybody done a great job, and the drivers all done. They couldn't have done better. And that was like my department was the cars and the drivers. Obviously the mechanics were looking after the mechanical side of things, but my was getting the aesthetics and all the parts, and then getting the drivers trained and building the routines with Colin and Naomi, the choreographers, and there was so much to do. Like it was so. The reality is we needed another 6 months. Like I remember the director of Cirque du Soleil coming to watch us rehearse, and he basically asked Rolly what the stand-up time was, and then he told him, and he was like, you need another 6 months, or you'd like to have had another 6 months. But the thing, it morphed into this big massive machine, and we had to get it out the door. And it couldn't have gone better. I have to say it was like the most stressful environment ever. And we had a premiere that night, and there was a red carpet job, and there was a load of celebs and all. And, myself and many of the guys were going, oh, bad tux or rent a tux. So like, anyway, Mr. Suter sorted me out in Belfast here, and anyway, and I haven't worked since, but there we go. So yeah, but it was a whole big thing, red carpet, media, everything. And then we done the show, and I say the guys all nailed it. They couldn't have done better. So once that was done, for me, it was like, I'd done the whole Top Gear thing and toured all Europe, and the only thing what I done that for was I wanted America. I've obviously been to America, but I have this sort of dream of doing stuff in America, zigzagging across the place, or seeing a bit of Canada too and things, and this was supposed to open the door for me to do that. And the plan was we'd get the show up and running.
And get over to America to do it?
Well, we eventually were going to the States, but also there was a talk of maybe doing a theme park. For Universal. So the idea would have been we would have got to the point where the show was up and running, and we all learned different routines. So if anyone was sick or whatever, you could slot into another routine. So yeah, the idea would have been we would have been on the road for 6 months to a year, and then everyone would have been going Kushti, and then myself and some of the core guys would have went over to LA or wherever and done an install, which would have kept me out there for a year or two, which was the dream. But yep, it was done and dusted. So anyway, it's all done, and it's like, shit, what are we going to do now? And there's a guy, one of the guys that drove for me, Sebastian, great guy from France. Him and his father have been doing movies and stuff for years. And there's another guy who, when I was building the team, I kept trying to see him when I was in LA, a guy called Brett Smurs. And Brett is one of the best drivers. The best driver I've ever seen is a guy called Sam Bowden from this country. Sam is, anyone who's anywhere involved with auto testing is going to know instantly who Sam is. Like Sam's, I can't tell you how he makes a car move. He can make a car float like nobody else. You know, everything's effortless. But certainly this guy Brett's a great driver. And he's overcome an obstacle in that when he was a kid he had a terrible accident which lost half his leg. So he's a remarkable guy, lovely guy, and I mean he is a good driver, a real good driver. So every time I was in LA I kept trying to hook up with him, but he was away shooting, doing whatever. And so I found myself sort of in a position where I was a bit stuck, and between Seb and his father and then Brett's dad, I was a stunt coordinator or whatever, I got a phone call out of the blue going, doing a movie, fancy coming out to Italy? And I was like, definitely. You know, I was like, okay. Yeah, I was like, I'm on the way. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, out to Italy. It was 6 Underground. Michael Bay was the director. I was a big fan of Bay's work, but I heard in the grapevine, you know, he's how should I put it?
A bit of a dick.
No, I wouldn't say that, but he's demanding. Demanding okay. Is maybe the word. And yeah, I turned up and it was real funny. So I arrived on a Friday, I think. Production stops over the weekend, so I got there Friday morning, whatever. And like, there's so many talented people there. It was incredible to see. And then the call sheet came out on Sunday night, and James Dean's on. I think James is coming. I was like, Jesus, we must be doing some cool shit tomorrow. Must be some, 100 mile an hour drift action going on. I was like, it's class. So I reports to the wardrobe at like 4 a.m. Movie work's really, really hard work, like really hard work. And I don't mean even for stunt people. I mean the unsung heroes of movie work, from what I can tell, are the wardrobe and the makeup people. Like those guys and girls gets by on 2 or 3 hours of sleep every night, Monday to Friday. Come Friday evening, there's always a bit of a let your hair down session, if you like, go in the pub or something, and like they're blocked in 5 minutes because they literally had 4 hours sleep the entire week, But anyway, I turns up at wardrobe, and they're like, Chris, and again, they're like, right, you're a policeman. And I'm like, fair enough. So I get dressed up as a policeman. And the next thing, say James turns up, and he's like, why the fuck are you dressed as a policeman? And I'm like, I don't know. And basically, long and short of it was, they wanted him to do donuts in Alpha around a camera. But it was a left-hand drive Alpha, he's going right-hand down, which means it would be difficult for him to see the camera. And it was just really expensive camera on the ground. It obviously doesn't want to run over. So James and I had a bit of a chat, and we're like, right, fucking, I'll stand in the middle. We'll pretend we're kids again. You do donuts around me. So we go over to Michael, and I haven't spoken to Michael yet. And Michael, and he comes over and he's like, you James, and James again, he's like, you Chris, and so James sort of explains, and James, I don't know if you know James or you met him, he's a lovely guy, real nice guy, really well mannered guy, but he explains in his nicest possible way that he's a bit worried about seeing the camera. It's not that he can't do his job, because we all know how good he is. So basically he's like, Chris and I have concocted this plan between us. He's dressed as a policeman, kind of fits with the storyline. He's going to stand there and like try and chase me, and I'm going to do donuts around him. And Michael Bay looks at me as if I'm fucking nuts. And, he's like, that sounds really dangerous. And I'm like, nah, we grew up doing this. It's like,
no way.
Yeah. So off we do the thing. It didn't make the final cut, but that was, first morning, first shoot. Where I'm clearly seen on camera, what you call established. And it winds up with James drifting off in the Alpha and me running after him like a lunatic. But it was funny. It was just funny because like James was standing there going, why the fuck are you dressed to play? Why aren't you in a car? Because there's other cars and everything. And like, it wasn't just me, there was like some really big names were there. There was Mark Higgins was there, Lloyd Bass, a great stunt driver, was there. There's some of the guys from Spain and Italy who are like world class. It was like a bit of a crucible of talent, if you know what I mean. And what they basically done was they I think they got too many heavy hitters in, but they wanted their, in case people either got injured and had to go, or I don't know, but there was a lot of us there, and it was weeks before we got near a car. We were, one point Higgins is pushing a pram down the street, and I'm sitting on a motorbike or something, and we're doing anything but driving, and that's what we do. But it was brilliant, I have to say. I really, really enjoyed it, and the crew and the team, and like a big production like that, there's maybe 2,000 people working on it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it was absolutely fantastic, and there wasn't one person on it that I honestly couldn't say was a great person or a very talented person, and I was brilliant. I was super stressful. But great, and I actually got on really well with Bay, because I mean, I don't know, he makes Jeremy look like a total fucking amateur. You know what I mean? But he like, there was one point we're standing there and he was calling for a drone or whatever, and like, I was told by a guy that worked for him before when out there, I was literally at the airport on the way out, and he phoned me and he goes, "You going?" I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Whatever you do, pay attention." I was like, "I will," and he's like, "No, I mean it." He says, "You know, if he calls your name, you be ready, you know, or you be there. Don't wander off or turn your radio off or do whatever, you know, pay attention, because that's what winds him up." And literally, you can see them, the drone guys or whatever, and he's calling them the radio, and he's shouting at them, and he's roaring at them, and like, everyone's going, "Fucking answer the radio," you know, and they are chatting amongst themselves, whatever. Next thing, fucking megaphone drop kick through there, and he's lost it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm going, "Well, I should answer the radio." You know what I mean? But it was great. It was really, really good. I have to say, it was a brilliant.
Well, the pressure as well when you're the director, I suppose, is like, you know. Yeah,
but he's like, there was one point, and I'm really glad that I'd done that movie with him, and I very much hope to do more of his movies, because I have been a fan of his work. You know, all.
Well, Bad Boys original.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you've got Bad Boys and you've got The Rock, and you know, all these Pearl Harbor. You know, some of the stuff he's done is incredible.
His
you know,
movies have took a bit of a turn since then. Like, I really do think.
Yeah, but I guess
Bad Boys is such a classic. I think,
yeah.
You know, really
but he didn't do the last one, did he? No, he didn't. He didn't do
which was also, by the way, epic.
I actually didn't. I wasn't a fan.
Really? Yeah.
But whatever way you look at it, I sort of looked. I had a lot of time for what he'd done.
Yeah.
And it was great to see him work. Like, there was one day we're shooting somewhere in Florence, and anyway, we're doing a thing. It was real funny because the wardrobe kept putting this. Basically, it was like this jacket that Tom Cruise had worn sometime. It was like a brown jacket, collar a bit like this, a brown leather jacket. He hated this jacket, and I remember Wardrobe giving it to me that morning. I was like, I ain't not wearing this. He go fucking nuts. You know what I mean? And they're like, "Oh, you know, he says he wants the jacket." I'm like, "Okay." And literally, he turned up, and I swear he near trailed me across the square trying to get this jacket off me. And he went and found a bin, stuffed it in the bin. Don't want to see that jacket ever again. Do you know what I mean? The wardrobe guy's like, "Oh, okay." Do you know, but anyway, he's great. But we were all ready to go, and we had to wait. And we were like, "Oh, why are we waiting?" And he's got this, you know, as we like I don't know, you might know film guys, but you know, it's like a lens, if you know what I mean, that you put up your eye.
Yeah.
I remember.
He's just like looking at the shots.
Yeah, he's looking at the shots, and basically what he's waiting for is the sun to be in exactly the right place, so it lines up with this pillar.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm like, "Oh, okay." You know, I started thinking, you know, I've got to be fixing the edit. Do you know what I mean? So, but it's not. You know, he's a real passion for what he does, and it was wonderful to see him do his thing, and all the other people. Like, there was so many talented people on that.
He loves to get behind the camera, actually use it as well. A lot of directors
absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
It was funny because we done Italy. The car chase bit was over, and then we're out in the UAE, and they kept trying to dress me as what's the correct term? You know, like a native from a made-up country in that part of the world, and you know, I'm very white, and it's difficult. Like, the wardrobe people were just like, "Really, Chris?" And I'm like, "Say us in the sheet." But anyway, we turned up one morning, and it was on the call sheet that there was Navy SEALs. So I'm like, "Fucking Navy SEAL right here." You know, I'm like, "Navy SEAL, please." And they're like, "No, you're down as a protester." And I'm like, "Not today." And they're like, "Actually, you probably would make a good Navy SEAL." So of course I had all these stuff, and it turned out the wardrobe had outdone themselves. They hadn't bought, they'd hired them, but it was the actual proper trousers and top and all. These trousers, they were so comfortable. I googled them afterwards, like £600 for the bloody trousers. Top was 250 quid, but I'm a real comfy stuff. So I puts it on, and of course I walks out. Everyone else is, you know, like, "The fuck's he got a Navy SEAL outfits?" You know, so a couple of them back in the wardrobe, and I don't know, pulled a few strings. So now there's 3 or 4 of us dressed as Navy SEALs, and we're sitting in this aircraft hangar, military base in the UAE. And it was like a scene from a movie, but it wasn't. It was before the movie started shooting, and like, we're talking and playing cards and on our phones or doing whatever, waiting to go. And the hangar doors were open, and you can just see this silhouette of all these guys coming in. I was like, "Who are those guys?" And you could just tell. You couldn't see anything other than a black outline, but it's like, they're real Navy SEALs, aren't they? And then I called one of the guys. I was like, "Who are they?"
They're here to tell you what to do.
Yeah, the real Navy SEALs. And I'm like, "Oh, fuck." I slid down the chair. I've never felt so inadequate in all my life. Like, these guys turned up, you know, scars, bullet holes. You know, they're real deals. You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Fuck, take this off me." Do you know what I mean?
I want to be dressed as
and they were brilliant. They were brilliant. Like, we done this scene out in the way out in the desert, near a place called Liwa. And I'm in a Range Rover. As a bit of a thing happens. But basically, it's an ambush, you know, and I was funny because Bay's like, "Right, stunts, you know, who knows how to use a gun?" And I'm like, he's like, "Have you used a gun before, Chris?" And I was like, "I'm from Belfast." He's like, "You'll do." So all of a sudden, I'm armed up with this machine gun, all proper guns, but firing blanks, you know. And anyway, there's 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Oh, job envy. I'll talk about that in a sec. But anyway,
Fred North.
Oh, do you know him?
No,
or you know
I
of
don't
him?
know him, but I follow him on Instagram.
He's a hero. Anyway, we do this thing anyway, and we're driving down the road, and we get an ambushed, and then these seals come up, 5 and 5 or 6 and 6, whatever it was. I need to rewatch the movie, but they come up from these sand dunes, and there's a shootout, and we do the first take. And basically, for the first couple of takes, it was you overshoot everything in a movie or a TV show. You overshoot shitloads, and then it can all be fixed in the edit, or you can decide what you want to do later. So I think I was dying the first few times, so I'm playing dead and all that. And then Bay's like, no, we need some hostages. He's like, Chris, you stay alive, and such and such, you stay alive, and whatever. So, we surrender, if you like. So on the way out to Abu Dhabi, I brought myself a lovely new pair of Oakleys, or not Oakleys, Ray-Bans, class. They're real, proper, near nice Ray-Bans. I've got my Ray-Bans on because Wardrobe's glasses didn't fit my big head. And anyway, you're all in your gear and bulletproof vest and all that, which is really fucking heavy. But anyway, we surrender, put the guns down. Some of the people are dead. I'm not. They're like, get on the ground. You get on the ground, and I swear to God, one of them literally stamped on my head. I'm like, the fucking glasses are broken. Everything. Dude, it's only a movie. It's not real. Do you know what I mean? And I'm actually really friendly with him to this day. He lives out there. He's no longer served, but he lives out there, and he drives a lovely Lambo actually. But yeah, it's like anything you get carried away in the moment. You know what I mean? So like they've came out. I was real funny for the first few takes because like they're coming out. Like they're proper deal, you know what I mean? They're coming out and emptying the clips, like changing the clips, and like Bay's like, whoa, you fired off like fucking 5,000 rounds to be obliterated by that, you know what I mean? He's like, squirt or whatever, but with respect to him, he's a big supporter of all those guys, and he always uses them when and where he can. And I remember later, another venue or whatever, I'm still flogging this Navy SEAL outfit to death, I'm like, fucking love this outfit, man. It's proper all gear, like Irvin that they were, all the gear. And it's like a hostile village. There's a massive explosion during it. But anyway, I'm still doing the Navy SEAL thing, and by this stage, there's just me. So it's just me, actual Navy SEALs, and a guy that serves with the British forces. And he's like, Chris, you stay at the back because you're going to really fuck this up. Because even the way
that's
they
always
walk,
nice, isn't it?
I know, but I like that kind of honesty. You know what I mean? That's why I like them.
Fair enough, yeah.
But like even the way they walk, I was watching, and we're obviously maneuvering the gun, and they're putting it over people's heads and all. It's just obviously it's their craft. It's their craft. You know what I mean? Not choreographed. It's their craft and what to do. So we'll walk up this sort of street, we're all hunched down, and like I found a doorway. So I improvised. I was like a fucking doorway. It looks like a nice check. I threw myself in this doorway. Cut! And he comes over and he goes, what are you doing? I said, I figured I'd get out of the road. He's like, good idea, you keep doing that. So I walked like in this room and just dived into the doorway in every take, and that went on for a day, And and then there was this big massive explosion, and he likes to blow shit up. And it was funny because you had the health and safety guy wrecking himself, and then you had the pyro guy, and then you had where Bay wanted you to go, And Bay was like, you go there, and the safety guy's, no way, and he moves your way back, and then there's a compromise. The pyro guy goes, well, they're safe, and you reach the middle ground, and then you're about to go, and then Bay's on the radio, he's like, move forward. And like the health and safety guy at this stage, he's overruled, nothing matters, And like explosions are all done with, they're obviously controlled, but they're done with like gunpowder, and also, it's proper. And a couple of times
so
like you're blowing clean off your
for
feet.
most of the shoot then, yeah.
It was a gap of a couple of weeks because it's some stuff to sort out at a Topgear thing to do, and a few things to sort out at home. So I came home for a couple of weeks, and I really hoped they'd bring me back, and they did. Fair play, and they said they would, and they did, and I'm very grateful for it. But it was a wonderful experience. I have to say, it was really, really interesting to see, and see how it all comes together.
Well, hopefully that's going to be something then, because that was obviously pre-corona there, and then obviously.
So I was there's another. I was scheduled to go on literally a few weeks before the craziness started. I was scheduled to go out to Rome for another job.
Your name's in the roster now, so hopefully they.
Look, the way that whole world works is there's a lot of very talented stunt people across the world, and like let's be realistic. My sort of specialist field, if you like, is car stuff, So they're not going to bring me out to do falling downstairs and stuff, which I don't do. But like the weird thing about it is we ran for, there's a guy Adam Brayshaw that he used to work with on Fast actually. Adam doubles Ryan Reynolds quite a lot in movies. So, but his wife and him were having a little baby at the time, so he couldn't come out for the first few weeks and had a stand-in. So I'm there for a few weeks doing all the stuff, and he lands. And I think the first day he landed, I'm basically getting knocked down by a car by Brett. This guy Brett's basically knocking me down. And he's like, yeah, after a few takes, you know, I ain't getting fucking sore. You know, you're wearing armour and padding and whatever, but basically I had to do like a brush against this car again. Then I don't even think I'd made the edit. So I'm getting hammered, like my hands are literally blue with bruised and I'm numb, my arms are numb, and I'm getting hammered and falling on the steps, you know. So, you know, you can hurt yourself. And after a few takes, like Alec was over and he goes, Chris, and he goes, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, dude, I'm doing what everybody tells me to do. I don't care. Whatever he wants me to do, I'm doing it. And he's like, all right then. He's like, just be careful. But these guys have spent a long time training for all this stuff. Yeah. But I have to say, I genuinely loved every bit of it. Like, loved every bit of it. And that desert scene with the Blackhawks, Fred North, like, I have to tell you.
Good Instagram if anybody hasn't watched it.
Oh man, Fred. I've been very, very lucky, and I've driven pretty much everything you could possibly drive, bar a run, which will fix it sometime, but I've driven everything, and turn up to these jobs, and, you know, I'm very fortunate, and I don't take any of that for granted, but I never sort of look at a producer or a director or a camera person or a sound person and go, I wish I had their job. Yeah. You know, I'm like really happy with what I'm doing. Right, so we're in, where the hell were we? We're in Italy, I'm trying to think where the hell we're. Anyway, Toronto. We're in Toronto and we're doing this scene. I basically got this Range Rover. And there's a scene anyway, it's like protesters and you're hammering a bit of it through protesters and everything else. And movie stuff is genuinely dangerous. It's genuinely dangerous. Like at one point in this road, I'm hitting 80, 85 miles an hour, and there was a girl, actually, Orla from Dublin. Her job was to sort of throw something at the windscreen and then dive out of the road, if you know what I mean. And like there's a few times, and I know Orla, and I think very highly of her. There's a few times I was like, "Geez, Orla, please move." You know what I mean? Because you're setting pins, you know, and you're just relying, but brilliant at her job, and so is everyone else, and they're out of the road in time. But it can be hairy, like, you know, if they had slipped or something, like ironically they were throwing tomatoes, and I was like, "You're going to be like that tomato if you get out of the road," you know. But anyway, we're doing this thing anyway, and then we're getting lined up. We've done a few takes, different camera angles, and everything else. And then next thing, there's a real tension appears from nowhere. And then Bay's on the radio, like, I was set doing this now. And then I'm like, what's the crack? And they're like, Fred's coming. Like, who the fuck's Fred? You know what I mean? And the Bay's on the radio, you know, the birds in the air, the chopper's coming and all. And I'm lined up and I haven't seen him, haven't heard him, haven't done nothing. I'm sitting there, there's 5 Range Rovers, I'm lead, I'm sort of setting the pace and everything else. And I'm waiting on, and sometimes you'll get a rolling, and you have time to sort yourself out. And then other times it's like, action, you know what I mean? It's like, so you're sitting in D, left foot in the brake, ready to go. Like, and this chopper just comes past me like just like this, and I don't know shit about flying helicopters, but he just came in. I was like, "Who's that?" Do you know what I mean? And my job basically was to run down this road as fast as I could, and Fred would come, and he was basically flying sideways, you know. So he's literally sideways in the camera ship, pointing at me the whole way, and I asked, Bay just told me, he's like, Chris, you keep your toe in it, you just keep going as hard and as fast as you can, because you can't tell whether, if you've got a fixed camera point, you know when you're out of shot, you know, so you know there's no point in taking any risks to back off everything else. Equally, if you have a camera car, you hear cut or whatever, but obviously with a helicopter, it keeps rolling, so it's just like, go as, just, you know, they won't call a cut, you know, until it's actually, you're properly cut, because you never know, well, you might get something cool, you know, in the shot.
Yeah, of course.
So, and obviously he's in a fucking helicopter, so we're bombing down this road, like, and I am pinned, but I'm half sort of obviously concentrating, and I'm half sort of looking out the window going, because you can't turn around and look, because that would be like go home material. Do you know what I mean? And I just like, this is fucking cool. Do you know what I mean? He's just running alongside. And anyway, we're bombing down this road. It's wet. I'm doing ballistics about 95 miles an hour in a Range Rover, and like, they're not the lightest vehicle to get stopped. And I swear to God, on one occasion, there's a castle in Toronto, and I nearly embedded the Range Rover in it. I just about got this thing stopped.
Yeah, I'm fascinated.
And you know, I've stopped, and I'm like, fuck, I was close. Then it's like, cut, and I'm like, oh yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then like, we'll move on. We got the UAE, and the next thing, Blackhawks are turning up, and everyone's like, oh Jesus. I was like, I wish I'd learned how to fly a helicopter. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, but like, those guys have all went through the military and everything else. And there's, I think it's Brian Reynolds, you call him, one of Fred's good friends.
And
like,
he always flies the other one, doesn't he?
He's got 2 Blackhawks all prepped out with the missile launchers.
And they put them in the
see
back
those
of a
Blackhawks?
lorry.
I've, you know, as you know, I be near a particular airport occasionally, and I'm used to seeing helicopters and all that stuff, but see the wash that can be generated from a Blackhawk. At one point in this desert scene, we're doing the Range Rover thing with the Navy SEALs, all that jazz. I open the door and I get out and I shoot back with my gun because I'm from Belfast. And
Brought it with you.
I'd like to just say that for anyone listening internationally, not everybody in Belfast is, but anyway.
But most of us
Yeah, so we're doing this thing anyway, and Fred was flying the camera ship, and he's also Fred. I think he's one of his colleagues there. I can't remember if he was flying or coordinating. I think he was coordinating, but the military were flying the Blackhawks. Now, I don't know a lot about helicopters, but I'm told that flying in a desert is very difficult in a helicopter because of the terrain constantly, obviously dunes and everything.
Right.
And whatever happened, the pilot, he didn't make a mistake, but he basically needed to give it maximum lift and quick, or I was going to end badly, like really badly. So he gave this thing, and I right at the time, I opened the door, and I just heard like the things, it's from here to the car, part of the car. It's not far, like it's that close.
Yeah.
Next thing, and I mean the door, it literally the door of a brand new Range Rover it went around so hard, smashed the headlight. And I've got a gun in my hand, right? And I knew what's coming next. I've been around cars long enough to know, fuck, this is gonna hurt. So the gun's on a lanyard. I dropped the gun. Hands up over my face. Range Rover door right in the fucking face. I hit the deck like fuck, I was sore. And I look around me, and like everyone's just either rolling through the ground with the downdraft or whatever. Bass shouting, God, fucking sand there. We wrecked the place. But I was like, holy shit, literally whatever he had to do, he just had to give it like maximum lift. And I mean, yeah, I've never had job envy until I met Fred North, and I still talk to him quite regularly on Instagram and everything, and we would have a bit of banter over that because he texted me later that night. He's like, "Oh, sorry about the door." It wasn't my Range Rover, but it was, but yeah,
that's great.
But yeah, they those guys, and I mean they're. Like, I've never flown a helicopter, and I'm sure it's not the easiest. I'm told it's a bit of a balancing act between all the instruments and your hands and feet and everything. So I'm sure it's not easy to fly, and what they do is incredible. It has to be one of the best Instagram accounts there is, I think. Anyway,
I love the way he's just allowed to post anything he wants as well.
Well, he does and he doesn't, but you see, he's Fred North. Do you know what I mean? I'm not well up in the whole world of helicopters, but even here, a couple of guys work in the airport, like, you ever work with Fred North? Everybody kind of in that circle, I feel like, knows who he is, and rightly so, because he's a massively talented guy, and dream job. Should have done that.
It's a pretty cool name as well. Like.
Yeah.
It is. I must find out if he was actually born with that name, or is he, it's like a pseudonym,
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like.
Well, Chris, like, I was just in basically in a zone there listening, but I think we've gone for about 2 hours there. We normally do a little thing at the end of our podcast where we rate some of the viewers' cars. Have a go at that.
I have no problem if you want to do that. We're going to do other people's cars. Actually, we're probably out of time. I wanted to touch on that because something needs to be done about the cars that are running around this country.
Oh yes, you were gonna. What were you thinking about it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you said, like
there's somebody sitting on our sofa there. Pete makes a lot of them. I'm only joking.
No, I think it's look. I don't make any secret of it. I'm 42 years old, and I've witnessed such a change in car culture. I feel like over the past 25 years or whatever. And it was in my day, and for many years, it was all about. You get your test, you buy as good a car as you could afford, you would polish it, you would drive it, you would learn how to fix it, you would do all these things. And like the past sort of number of years, that seems to have disappeared. And now all of a sudden, everyone's running around, well, not name names because they'll be shot. But anyway, everyone's running around with cars that are borderline not really petrol head cars. It's like your Jeep, for example. Yeah. That's cool. And you don't necessarily need a big bank account to have a cool car. Like I've seen people buy cars at £1,000, and what they do with them and how they make them individually their own is, I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And the whole diesel thing in this country, like this country's obsessed with diesel, and I get it. I get it. It makes sense. It's economical. Yeah, but it's like, can you really call yourself a petrol head or a proper car enthusiast if you don't? Like, you don't just buy. All right, I'm going to say it. You don't just buy a Golf and stick a set of wheels and set of springs on and go, I'm not a fan of car.
No, yours is petrol. Yours is petrol. Yours is all right. Yours is petrol. It's petrol. It's all right. Like.
But hear me out, right? Hear me out. So I know it's a bit controversial, but like even back in, I had a Bora as a company car once, but it was brand new and it was lovely. It wasn't bastardized.
No, right.
But
yes, bring them on.
I think it's going to be fixed. I think it's going to be fixed soon. I think it's going to come full circle.
And why is that?
Because I think, like it or don't like it, the world's moving in a way where we're going to be forced into hybrids and EVs. And I think that's going to put. I think it's going to see like a.
So you're thinking basically people are, because everyone's going to be kind of having the
I
same.
actually think, and this is
they're
this
going
is
to push them into modification.
yeah. Well, I actually think that we're at exciting time in the car culture, if you like, because car culture existed since cars did. In the hot rodders in America, and like I know. Back when my dad was young, Bangor, I'm sure some of your guys.
Bangor's the home of
yeah, but I mean, you go now and it's like you drive in the car park and you're like, right, and, it's not what it once was. And I actually think that I think Renault Clios with free insurance maybe is what the start of it. That's where it started to go wrong. But anyway, we've ended up with some.
James's face right now.
Pete also had a Clio, like.
Pete, you and me need to have a chat after this.
Pete's not happy.
He also has an M3 though, so it's alright.
Oh, good man. But no, look, I know it's a wee bit controversial, but like back then, people made a car their own and they learned how to fix it themselves.
That's what the whole Max Power was. It was like putting a mad bumper on something that didn't fit.
Yes, but the thing about it is, most of those crazy Max Power cars, which wouldn't fit in today's society, but most of them didn't just have a crazy body kit. Most of them had
the
a new
interiors
different
were
engine, the interior, the sound system.
Saying it was like finding something that didn't work, and then
whereas
made it work.
now you turn up to a Cruise and it's literally 10 of the same car, most of them with the same wheels, same springs, whatever. Screwed out, smoke flying everywhere. It's not. I get it, but it's not for me. And I'm glad I done my thing when I was younger, if you know what I mean. But I think as a car culture and as a global thing, I think we really are on the cusp of the most exciting time in the thing, and I think that's down to electric vehicles. Like there's some companies. There's a company, I forget the name of it. I'll find it. But there's a company in America. In LA, and they're basically transplanting like Tesla stuff into like Ford Broncos.
What's
that Porsche?
See, I like it, but I also, it scares me a bit because you're almost sacrilege. Like if you're taking a classic
don't
Porsche
get me wrong,
and sticking a Tesla battery in it.
Yeah, I've owned enough V8s and everything in my time. I appreciate that, and I do, and I wish it would stay like that forever, but it's not going to, and that's the reality of it is it's not going to. But I think over the next 10 or 15 years, diesels are going to get a life hammered out of them. They're going to drive them off the road. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, they are going to drive them off the road eventually, and we're going to be forced into some sort of.
James is devastated.
Well, it doesn't help stuff like.
I'm telling you, do a bit of googling. Like you imagine how quick that thing would be with like a Tesla stuff. And the thing about it is, you don't just fire in the motor. You find out how the motor works. You find out how you can make it better, how you can make it generate more horsepower, how
Well, this is what I've been saying when I chat to James and stuff about what car I get after the M3, and I'm just gonna keep getting big petrol cars until I can't anymore.
And why not? But like I remember it was the F80. I think it was before the F80 came out. I kind of had a bet with the guy, which I lost. I sort of thought that the next generation of M3 was going to have some sort of hybrid tech in it. I'll tell you how it happened. Norway, I was in Norway doing Topgear gig, and we had a pickup at that time. The M3 was just out, and I had a pickup an i8, and we drove for an hour and a half out of Oslo to go to a BMW dealership, which BMW Norway had sorted out these cars for us. So the guy who was with me automatically gave me the keys to the M3, and I'd already driven one of them. I was like, actually, I'd like to drive that i8, and he was like, oh, he was happy enough. He wanted to drive the M3, so I took the i8. And I was really impressed with the drive of it. It was the first sort of electric vehicle I'd driven on the road, if you like. And like they're only a 3-cylinder mini engine. And there was times like when he pinned the M3, and there wasn't a massive amount in it. Okay, he pulled a bit, but not that much. And and the thing about it, it went round. We kind of overshot a junction, and we had to take a turn off the motorway real quick. And they're big, massive like U-bends off the motorways there. And I went in this, and I'm looking at the tires in the back of the M3 and thinking the tires in this thing are tiny. And I was like, I think it's going to go wrong. And he went around the corner, and the thing went around the corner like it was on rails. And I was like, this is actually, if I could take this
skinny,
drivetrain and plant it into like an F80 M3, and then have like an overboost switch or some sort of, I was like, that's like, I can go, I live in Fermanagh, and I can get the whole way to Belfast on 50p. And when I want to have fun, it is the future, and it's coming, it's happening.
Well, I actually remember that Topgear episode where Jeremy took the i8 and up through England or something, and at the end he had the M4 and the i8, and it was, I always remember for some reason, and then he chose the i8 instead of the M4, and I remember going,
yeah,
he fucking doesn't know anything.
It's funny because the first gig that Chris Harris actually did it was a BBC thing. It was inside an arena, but the BBC do a private thing called the BBC Showcase. They bring over execs from all around the world, and they pick their programmes. But it was the first job for the new lineup of presenters, if you like. And we had all these cars there, and I had an F12 TDF, which I had to sign about 2 million bits of paper to drive. But anyway, I got that, and my horse was in the passenger seat. My job was to bring him out, and do a thing, and then he would get out. And we all had our people to bring out. And I remember we're sitting backstage, and now we had with a P1, with a 918 Porsche, with a P1. We had the LaFerrari, and obviously a whole load of other stuff.
Jesus.
And Harris said to me, he's like, what would you pick? And I was like, this. And he literally looked at me like my head was on backwards.
So what car were you in?
I was in an F12 TDF.
What is that?
Ferrari F12 TDF.
Okay.
So for me, what was the last sort of... It was the Ferraris... it was going to be, in my head, it was the finest. They were going to refine the traditional combustion engine to, if you know what I mean. It's like 760 horsepower and, and a V12, naturally aspirated. I was like, this is the pinnacle of, for me. And he was like, P1. And I was like, oh, don't get me wrong, the P1's lovely and it's great. And, I was certainly more than impressed with that when I drove one. But at the same time, it's like generation one of. Yeah. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, our kids are going to grow up and laugh at that thing, because in 20 years' time, that's going to be, okay, that's where it started. But look where we are in 20 years. Do you know what I mean? I was like, this is the last. Yeah, I was like, this. And later that night in the bar, we had a bit of a discussion about it or whatever, and he was like, I get where you're coming from. That I love that car, but I think the whole industry, the whole thing, the whole culture is on the cusp of a very exciting time. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's definitely more technology, focused as well.
Well, it's going to encourage people rather than, like at the minute, like everybody maps their cars and all that. Like we didn't. I remember I had a Calibra once. It was the only front wheel drive car I ever had. I had a Calibra once, and back then you were shorting out pins in the ECU, and you were doing all these crazy things and changing octane plugs. And there's a guy I knew had a 205, and there wasn't a 205 in the country except his 205. It was a 1900 block with a 1600 head with a Piper cam and a straight through exhaust and a fuel pressure regulator. But you figure all this out. Yeah. You bolt it all to it, and it doesn't work. I'll change this. I'll do that. You're figuring all this out as you go. Whereas now all that's lost. Like none of that stuff happens anymore. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just like
it's all
I bought a set of coilovers from a car. How much were they? 200 quid.
I also think it's partly to blame, like creativity in general, is obviously not everybody's a creative person, but now everybody can see the car they want on Instagram and they just go, I want that car, and then they just go copy
You're right, that's very interesting, because obviously, years ago, the information wasn't as easy to access, and it's funny.
You see a magazine, but then that magazine would be out of date by the time.
That's right.
Maybe take a bit from there, And
yeah, I mean, like younger people will never know the excitement of Thursday morning on the Auto Trader. Because before the Auto Trader, it was the Belfast Telegraph on a Thursday, and then the Auto Trader came out.
Well, mine, I always remember going to Tesco and buying at least 2 magazines in Tesco.
Yeah.
Not quite Auto Trader.
Well, Auto Trader, if I remember right, it came out on the Thursday, but if you were in the know, you could get it on the Wednesday night. So basically what happened was the guys I was running around with in Lisburn and all the time,
they creative drink, did you?
Yeah, but they knew the delivery driver's route. So basically, like, he would go to...
Well, is this for the Fast
and Furious? It's a bit Fast and Furious, yeah, it was. But basically, like, they were getting the magazine. And the thing about it was, if you were looking to buy stuff, come 11 o'clock on a Thursday morning, all the bargains would be gone. Because the people that were...
they were like...
They knew such and such a shop got their copy at midnight, so they're boosh in, 24-hour shop, Auto Trader. It's not here yet. There it is. Get it open. Do you know what I mean?
Must you want for that 20?
But you're right. The ease of accessing information now is obviously incredibly straightforward compared to what it once was. But no, I do. I think. And I know this goes against everything that we are ingrained with as car people. And don't get me wrong, I'll have some sort of nice car as long as I possibly can, and preferably something with a V8 or whatever. But I think we're on a very exciting time in the car world, a time that hasn't existed until now, because really what we're driving is a evolution or a more modern version of what the engine was first invented. Like, we haven't really changed it that much. We've got better at making it, and we've made cars faster and things. But like you get into a Tesla and put it in ludicrous mode, and like.
So what's replacing the F80? First of all, can I just say I'm really happy I have the same car as this guy, because if you heard all them stories, like, and I have the same daily drivers.
Yeah,
so.
But he can drift it, unlike Hoop is.
What do you mean? Like,
I'd like so.
He's going to drift mine after here.
No.
I'm going to video it and say it was me.
I'll tell you, I'm really, really looking forward to a good coffee. I haven't had a good coffee since this whole crap started.
For flip's sake, we could have made you one.
No, I mean actual one, like from shop. I'm hoping a certain well-known coffee brand with green and white cups. I'm going to go to their drive-through.
So what's after the F80?
I don't know. That's the truth. I don't know. I've a little boy, and I'd like to have a feeling I want a Jeep. I've never had a Jeep, so I want some sort of Jeep. And I'm not saying I'll not get something or a
Model Y then. It's electric.
I call everything a Jeep. I know that's wrong.
Oh, dear.
I do.
We had this conversation.
It's really controversial because I was on a forum
We
or
had this
Facebook or something one night,
conversation.
and I made a reference to some guys as a nice Jeep. Fuck, he went through me for a shortcut. And I was like, it's a Jeep. And he's like, it's not.
Jeep.
It's a BMW
No,
X5M. And I was like, it's a fucking Jeep.
It's a Jeep.
It's got 4 big wheels and this lift. You know, it's higher than a
not
car. It's a Jeep. Yeah.
It's
Do you know what I mean?
like
It's not a Jeep.
No. What are you referring to? The make Jeep?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
No.
Like,
Look,
We
the
had
term
this-
Jeep existed before the make Jeep, I think. Did
We
it?
had this
I
same
don't
I think-
conversation on this podcast, and he was a firm believer in
the
don't call it a Jeep.
the first
His
the
Jeep?
first
Well, we were like, it's a Jeep.
that's
It's a
not-
Jeep.
Look, if it's got bigger wheels and it's higher than a car, it's a fucking Jeep. That's all it is.
That's a great.
Like the steak told you, all right, listen.
Lad, you need to change. Some say you need to change your record.
So Model Y then, the new Tesla SUV, if you're like electric. Or not, not quite yet.
But the problem is I live in the asshole of nowhere. And I'll tell you the biggest...
I had the same conversation.
Here's the problem,
300
right?
mile range.
Yeah,
you'll be
here's
fine.
the problem. So the problem is electric cars, they're great, but one thing they haven't sussed out is how we're all going to charge them up. And I need someone who can do patents, because I have a whole load of ideas in my head. This happens to me all the time. I come up with all these stupid ideas and I never do anything about them, and then suddenly somebody... See, when I was in school, my dad rode motorbikes, and I came up in technology. I started making this thing, and the teacher was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm making a cavity." And he's like, "What for?" And I was like, "Well, I can't remember, but the guy in chemistry class was like, if you put this liquid in, you give it a charge, it goes black." And he's like, "What are you doing that for?" And I was like, "I'm going to make my dad a number plate thing, so he can hit a button on his motorbike, and the plate will go black, and the police won't be able to get him." Round the back of the head, wasn't allowed to make it. Fast forward 20 years later, who patents that technology? Mercedes. Fucking, it's in the Dreamliner windows and everything. You know, you hit the wee button in the Dreamliner. I'm sitting there every time we get on Dreamliner and do this. The whole fucking flight going, that could have been me. Like, could have been invented.
But my teacher slapped me in the head.
Yeah.
It was stupid. You're like,
Such bad guidance. Do you know what I mean?
There you go.
But yeah. Cars, you're going to do cars.
Yes, let's do some cars. So these are what we do at the end of the podcast. Basically, is if you want us to slate or rate,
I keep forgetting we're on a podcast. I thought we're just having a conversation now.
slate or rate your car. You can hashtag it ILB podcast on Instagram, and we will give you our opinion.
Probably slate.
So yeah, we're definitely just going to slate. You're allowed to just be.
Don't hold back. Like,
Right, let's go back to
you starting?
when was the last ones we did? I don't remember. We've done these.
oh,
Oh,
God.
James.
How many beers have you had?
1, 2.
We've done the Rover, hasn't we?
You like
No,
it?
But that's some yoke.
That's same. No, it's the same Rover from the last one. Like,
Okay.
it's the same guy. He told us so. It's not diesel. It's petrol.
We're disappointed.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, she's a petrol.
Nice.
Pint.
We'll
Right,
start.
so here's the thing, right? I don't
So
know if
hold on, I
the-
have to describe for the viewers at home. We've got
Oh,
a
they-
Mark,
can I see it?
Mark 7.
Pretty sure we did this last week as well.
Oh, for flip's sake.
We did.
We
Yeah,
did.
better let them see it.
Look, it's fine. It's a Mark 7. Look at you. Yeah, that Mark 7 Golf, bags and wheels.
So here's the thing, right? Ryan, who you know will work for, he's got a Golf GTD. And I see every time I drive it, I'm like, this is class. Now, it's slower than Ibac's with a set of R wheels on it, if you know what I mean. And it's class. Like, it's an everyday car. I'm like, this is real nice. And I know
You're feeling here. Like,
I know, but I like it.
Slate
So
or rate?
what I'm going to say, right, rate.
Slate.
Yeah, rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. I skipped the car. Here we are, Fiesta.
We Fiesta, like.
I like that.
Oh, why? It's different, like. Back in the day.
Cut to.
Not feeling it. Not feeling it. No.
I like
Slate.
that. He's looking something Jap though, so that's a good call. Like.
What do you think of the
Upset
fitment?
and
Nice
stuff
rims,
like-
nice wheels.
yeah.
I like the colour code in the wheels.
I like it.
You like it?
I do like it. Rate it.
It kind of reminds, that front bumper really reminds me of the cars you were talking about back in like kind of fast car days or max car days.
Yeah.
No, it's
I
not.
get it.
It's unfortunately not for me. That
Not for me either, but
E36.
They
That's
are-
absolutely paid out,
it's-
that.
No, it's the German IS 200. Like,
you see, looking at that, that's like a 318 or something, and
it's a 328. He's hashtag.
328.
it.
I would
Hashtag
get
it.
on the hashtag.
But he
Sorry,
could be lying.
these guys
That's-
here love to read hashtags and call you out.
right.
Well, that's because you're like, I don't even know what this is, and it like says it on the screen. Like, you can avoid that. Like,
When I had my first E36 M3, a friend of mine argued that it was a waste of money, and he bought a 328. And I give him one drive in my M3, and 2 days later, he didn't M3.
And you were like, why did you buy one that doesn't have an M3 badge on it? What's wrong with you?
But he put the kit and all. It looked exactly like my car, but it wasn't an M3. And then he was adamant. It was like, oh, it's the same.
Yeah,
and I was like, here, drive that.
Did he map it and say it has the same?
Well, see, there was no mapping back then.
It's not bad fitment.
Okay, like,
He's got
No, it's good enough fitment. And
here.
BMW is for style
I
points.
I hate people that take their number plate off and then
Oh,
and
no,
then
they
cable
block
tie
all-
it back on.
Block all
on
the
the
coolers,
grill.
so the friggin' thing overheats if you drive it properly.
Yeah, and they don't even like. It's the people who like get rid of it, like smooth their bumper, like make all the effort,
Yeah.
and
And then
they
put the
just
bumper
put
on.
And you're putting the number plate on. You're like, but you've literally just done all that, and then put your number plate back on.
I had an M3 CSL once and done that because it's a beautiful car and done that.
plate
I
on.
swear to God, I got about 4 mile. I think where's the
Really?
front bumper
Well-
or where's your number plate? In the windscreen, and it was like it fell off.
Oh.
And I tried for a week or two to get away with it. It just wasn't happening.
Serious?
So I ended up.
Well, here I'm going to give some advice here on the
I bet you have a
podcast.
smooth bumper.
But like don't sue me or anything. But it's only a £35 fine.
30. It's only 30.
£30, and you get 3 strikes, and then you put it on. So
Sometimes if you're really nice to them, they're like,
But it depends. It depends if they
I've
like
had
it.
three cars now in a row with no number plate on the front,
Controversial.
and I've only been fined 3
I've
times.
been fined a lot.
3 or
Let's
4
say I
times.
work on Boucher Road, and then
They pull you
They're
over,
always
and
there.
then you give them the odd.
Got caught
Oh, it's off.
It's falling off. No way, officer.
It's off again. Yeah, it says in your file here you've been warned
Yeah.
3 times and you got 2 fines. It's falling off again.
I got caught with that. Like I got caught on it was like a Monday or something. Got caught going home from work, and the next day another police car got caught. I was like, oh, it's fallen off, and he goes, it's flagged on our system that you were stopped yesterday. And I was like, yeah, it fell off again.
Like, to be fair, I actually am at the last straw. Like, if they do
If they
me
get you again?
like they take the reds.
So,
like,
is that what happens?
I don't
But
know. I've heard
they
this is
remove the
rumored,
reds
like-
to the car, but apparently it's such a hassle for them. I've
just
completely
don't leave it,
fucked
like.
myself here. They're doing me tomorrow. Anyway. That it's such a hassle with them. They don't really want to do it. So the last guy that pulled me went, yeah, put the plate on.
It's a lot of paperwork,
let,
is it?
Let me go, like.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I got stopped the other week and actually got told that number plate stickies are not the correct way to put them on. This police officer told me that's not the official way to do it. And I went, well, I worked for a company, worked for BMW, and that's what they gave us to fit brand new cars, PDIs, number plate stickies. He goes, no, that's incorrect. And I went, well, we were on Boucher Road. I was like, you may go around most of these places.
Go and speak to the director and tell him.
Everybody
Yeah.
on Boucher Road. And it was, he just looked at me and was like, oh, I don't think that's the correct way. And I was like, I think you're wrong.
So some cops have say though, and some cops are very dead on. Like, I remember as incidents years ago where stuff happened, but some of them are dead on. One I got pulled a few weeks ago, or a few months ago actually, on my way to the airport to go somewhere. Not by them. It was by a different police car. But I got pulled, and literally, do you know what I done? I was passing them on the cruise control on it was 70 limit, and I was sitting at 70. And they were doing like 68 or whatever, which was fine. So I'm not breaking the law. And I swear to God, I pulled up beside them,
yeah.
and they matched my speed. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Well, see, I have
he
this.
was-
Like,
he
what
was
do
looking at race, like,
I
you were
do?
like- you
I'm
were
like,
like-
what do I do? Do I slow down? Do I speed up? What do
Did
I
you not count them
Well,
down
you're
at
like
the horn,
10%.
drive this off?
But it's like, it's really. Well, I literally drove. They were literally. I was afraid to turn my head because his head was there, and I'm like, what'll I do? And then I was like, cruise control, dunk, 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 knocked it up like 73, just enough to, I crept, and I pulled it. And I swear to God, as soon as the indicator went off, and I was like, really? So I drove up the road, stopped, and everything else, checked all the details, everything's coasty. And I was going to the airport, which was now late, and everything's fine. He was going in this car, and all, yeah, thanks very much. And he's like, oh, keep your speed down. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to keep it cool here. And I was like, which way are you going? And he says, back that way. And I was like, well, that's good. I says, because I'm really late for the airport now. See ya. Boom. But yeah. So.
Yeah, well, that's funny because every time, because I have no front number plate, I see a police car ahead. They never do the speed limit. They're always set about 10 below, and it's that
You're driving
anxiety
behind them.
as you're like coming up on them, and you have to pass them. If they look in that right there, like they can.
No, I
see.
drive in behind them, and then like sometimes you'll see they'll slow down to make you overtake them. It's like, no, I will play this game. I will stop with you.
Oh, God, this-
Well, no, I want to overtake them, so
No, I just
I
sit
normally
behind
try
them,
and
like-
hide behind a car, and come up behind the car, and then at the last minute pull out into the overtaking. Boom!
The old slingshot.
I used to think they should do some sort of it should outsource the car end of things, and you just turn up the cruises and shit, you're getting points. Shit, you're getting points. That's cool as fuck. Does donut? Do you know what I mean? Do some sort of rating system,
So speaking of the police, I actually have an anonymous WhatsApp message here for they didn't want to post it on Instagram, in other words,
Right.
basically. So If you are listening, it is blue and yellow and a bit of white.
Yeah.
It's an Audi.
The wheels are too small. Needs bigger
And it's
wheels.
got big lights on the roof.
Do you ever look really carefully at the brake calipers? Not on that particular.
The undercover ones always have
Normally they're
huge
all,
ones.
they're
Like.
running Alcons and stuff. They've got all
Well,
the
yeah,
bits.
so we've been sent basically a PSNI, which is a Northern
carved
Irish
his back
Police
wheel there, or
Service
what's going on, like?
Audi estate. I've got some information here, okay?
Oh, okay.
So this is an anonymous entry, laughy face. 3.0 Quattro bi-turbo, unique blue, yellow wrap in 3M reflective vinyl. Extras include go faster stripes and warning system. 18 cones, 18 warning signs and stands, brush, shovel, first aid kit, 2 fire extinguishers, crowbar, wheel brace and sockets, 10 flashing lights, water rescue equipment, fire blanket, tarpaulin, defibrillator, tire depth gauge, 2 laser speed detection devices, tint master window tint. That's a good one. Tint master window tint measuring device. Tachograph reading equipment, LED torch, and 2 chunky peelers.
But here, all that, and he's just going to stop you for no plate.
Yeah.
It's only 30 quid, folks.
Just see something you touched on. Do your hater rate thing? Front windows being tinted.
It looks cool in photos, but like I just think it's.
I like
a
fishbowl
dick
cars.
move.
Like I've never tinted anyone. I just like.
You like it all clean? Yeah.
Like,
No, like
I like the back.
I wouldn't have it.
tint, like,
I like.
Oh, hold on. Do you mean windscreen or front?
Side windows?
Oh, I was talking
see
about front windscreen.
No, but like front windows is the side, which is
No, I think the side windows at the front. If you have the back ones done, I think
Yeah,
it looks far
prefer
better.
I like either none or the back windows done.
Let's
See
say,
that
like,
front window tinting?
I think if you're doing all of them, I think it has to be even. But like personally, my own cars, I like just the standard tint in some cars. Like Audi's, it has the green tint.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that looks smart.
But
But
like when you see, like I seen a car on Lisbon Road there last weekend, and it was a real nice 5 Series. But I mean, you're just going like, it was limo tint, front and the back, and
I don't like
all the
limo
windows.
tint, but the
is-
thing about the M3 is that they have them
Well, they have
standard
factory glass, yeah.
on the back,
yeah.
but then the front always looks a wee bit like
I
light.
think
But
it
we're
looks
so
something
used
now
to it now. I
Yeah.
think if you go to America, they're allowed it,
that's
and then
right.
you see it, and you went, actually, that does look okay.
But I mean, it is like if you ride a motorbike, or even if you're driving a car or cycling or whatever, you know, if you see a car sitting in a junction, you tend to almost sort of subconsciously try and catch the person's eye to see, does he see me, or is he looking at me?
they can't see
You know, it's like
it makes sense, but like absolutely, you know. But anyway, what do you think? Rate?
rate.
Rate?
Class.
It's a piece of shit.
I'll tell you a funny story. But one of these, I ran out of fuel once in the M3 because I really very rarely look at the fuel thing because it's just
Even
always
the big light,
it's
and
just
the
always
really annoying.
it was always so low that I just never want to look at it. But anyway, and I knew I needed fuel, and I thought I could make it to the next garage. Pulled onto the motorway to get to the next junction, and it just went dead on the motorway. And then just so randomly, one of these, literally 5 minutes later, pulled up behind me, and no number plate, by the way. So luckily it didn't drive by. Got in it to take me to the garage. And its gearbox shit itself, and he had to drive the whole way there in like second or third gear, and he had just made fun of me for like thing, and then he was driving this big diesel Audi like basically in second gear, and they got me a jerry can, brought me back, and then they had to go bring the car back to the mechanics, which I thought was quite
he
funny.
did it all in second gear the whole way.
Yeah,
What a
basically. I
champion.
think he ended up getting another gear, but he couldn't go down or he couldn't go up or something. But yeah,
They're incredibly well maintained though. You know, like they're always really well maintained. Those particular type of vehicles.
oh yeah, they tell us we know a couple of cops, and they tell us some interesting stories.
Yeah.
They say about
Know a few myself, probably the same ones.
yeah, probably is. So you think it's shit, James?
Yeah.
Tom?
Actually, maybe I should change it and say that it's great for the next time they stop me.
Yeah. I like that shape of A6 and that engine is one that I like. So, but bar the police stuff, but I like that
You like a big 3-liter Audi estate?
V6. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alright.
Big saloon cars are.
Big slim cars.
I had a E63 by turbo before that before that M3, and I tell you, it was some machine. Oh,
to be fair, I just made fun of him. I had a 3.5 estate BM, like, and I loved it.
I
Until I started raking.
Easy, doesn't he? Like,
I love my
Huh?
E63.
he forgets very easy.
I do. We'll do one more
Just
here.
big estate, big
New Simon's lovely Civic.
Yeah.
See, the fact you refer to him as first name basis means he's a friend, which makes me inclined to sort of go, actually, you know
Say
what?
what you want.
That's turboed.
It's also got a watermark here, you know. So, well, what do you think?
he
What do you
turboed
think?
it himself.
you know, is it running a spoon engine? Has Hector been at it?
No, Hector has not been at it. It does not have a see-through bonnet.
It looks a different color there. That's not actually that blue.
Enki wheels.
It's a darker blue than that, I think.
It's very cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is
no,
nice.
And he does
Well, this here, the
stuff's
iPad
really good.
showing it,
He
is
does
it
exhaust and stuff. His
well,
lab works really
Is it
good.
dark blue or
For
teal blue?
for me, the boot spoiler's a
Civic,
bit.
by the way, for the viewers at home.
Yeah, the boot spoiler's a bit
Slam.
too much for me. But other than that, no, the spoiler.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Like it's not really pulling off the Cosworth wheel tail thing, but nice car, yeah.
Okay.
I say he does all his fab work and stuff, and his
he's
his
built it all
exhaust and all is
himself.
real.
See, that's class. That's that's doing it himself. He's making
Yeah,
his own.
yeah.
That's-
No, he
that's what it's all
runs. He
about,
runs a
you
wee
know.
garage. Or
There
like
is,
a
there is
business
quite
or
a few,
something.
especially in England. There is boys that rock up and they do a lot of stuff to their cars, you know, like themselves. Definitely.
But like take
Here too, like here too, but-
take Peden, like everybody in the car game knows Peden. Like I love that. I first met him years and years ago with the whole Max Power thing, and he's still just doing his thing. You know,
He
he's
doesn't care. Like he's
no,
just doing.
he just does his thing.
Like,
And I remember, like, see when he done that Porsche, everyone was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it was borderline. Like, what did you offer? You ruined it."
all the purists
He's
were
like-
like, "How dare you?"
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? But I love that he just, and then those crazy paint jobs and the snakes and ladders and all that. I love that he does
That's
his thing.
why- that's
and
why
I
he's
hope he never changes
A lot of
from
fans
doing
about,
that.
like,
Have you
he's doing
seen what
your
he's
own
working
thing,
on
like.
at the minute?
What's he
Is this
got?
this
A Mark
Escort
a
that he
Mark
made?
1 Escort, I think it is.
Oh,
a Mark 2
Mark
Escort, which is
Get a 4-door.
It was
he's
a
turning a
four-door?
4-door into a coupe because the coupe was too expensive. And he was like, you know what, I can do it, doesn't matter.
If there's one man can do it, it's him.
I got the. I like. It was the picture he put up, and I was like, "Nah, no
was
way.
like-
He's actually done that."
I think the caption was like 4 doors or 2 doors were worth more money.
Yeah.
So like it's just
Yeah,
giving
it's
away
Like,
2 doors.
if you think about it on an international stage, like back then, whenever everything was Max Power crazy and all, like we had Fast Car with Max Power with all these magazines coming here to feature cars that were
Yeah.
set in the game,
Yeah.
and like those guys were basically every other week traveling the world, shooting shit,
Yeah.
and cool stuff, and like they're coming here, going, wow, like, fuck's sake, if they come over here now, what are we going to do?
Well, yeah. Well, but
Take up the last
We'll
200.
bring the Civic and the Clio.
No, but we need to sharpen up our game.
definitely.
So the last thing we end up doing in this is for viewers and listeners is we actually do a small competition at the end of every podcast. If you want to win some free merchandise, James here will send you out some air fresheners, a mug, I don't know, whatever
Yeah,
he feels
well,
like,
yeah.
some sweets. All you have to do is go to our YouTube, search ILB TV, find the podcast, leave us a comment, and we basically just pick a random comment. So that's what we're going to do now from the last one. Let's see. I never know how this thing works. I always just hit every button.
Every time, like.
Okay, here we go. The winner is Aaron Brown, and it's
If you have a question.
Oh, we've got a question. Go ahead, James. There.
If you guys had to choose one car manufacturer that is no longer around to make a comeback, who would it be and why? Keep her lit, lads.
DeLorean, just for the scandal.
I was just going to say
Easy,
DeLorean.
no, easy, man.
I was going to say DeLorean just because like it's made in Belfast. Like,
I must admit, but
not a racetrack.
But
like,
they weren't a great car, let's face it.
No, they were
you
terrible.
know.
They had a Renault
They look
engine,
cool
like-
and it was
Yeah, they were
bold
the back of the
design.
future,
And
but like it's terrible.
it's only in recent times, but anyone that's been to Australia will be able to relate. Like they've shut Holden down.
Oh, okay.
That is a global tragedy.
And they love Holdens in Australia. Like they are like
Like, and see in Australia, like the whole Holden and the Ford thing, like it's like
huge.
it's like
Well, they have the
there's
race,
gangs
don't
that
they?
meet
They
up
have
and beat the shit out of each other
Yeah.
over the thing. You know, they're so passionate about it.
one of my favorite things used to be on YouTube to watch them racing them things. Have you seen the stock car
That's,
racing? in
yeah,
Australia?
that's. I have to say, I'm fortunate enough to have been there, and there's a place called Sam's in Sydney, and anyway, one time I blagged my way in there and was doing a Topgear gig. And, give it. I'm here to doing this, and he started showing me around. No, it wasn't. No, and he had a room upstairs where he builds engines, and like it was like every engine in this room's got over 1,000 horsepower.
I never even realised they shut
And
it down.
the irony is, in Australia, you're not supposed to be
they
allowed
don't
to
like to
modify your
modify
car.
cars?
Well, no,
Yeah.
you're legally.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to modify your car. And he's like, oh, in Sydney, there's easy over 100 cars that look normal from the outside, but run over 1,000 horsepower. And I was like,
seriously.
Jesus.
But I love the Commodores. They always do. It's
Yeah.
like the big massive ones. They've just
Yeah.
like steel wheels.
Oh.
Look like a normal granny car.
I landed in one time with a friend of mine in the airport. We went a few days early for a bit of a holiday, and we got the hire car desk, and we're due to get some rubbish. And anyway, blagged the Holden from the girl. And long story short, we're out sightseeing. We're going up this hill. There's loads of hairpins and all on it. He figures out if with an electric handbrake, if he holds it long enough, like 5 seconds, it'll lock. So anyway, he's impromptu pulling this handbrake. I near go off the cliff a few times. We're having a bit of fun. Come around the last corner, and like, have you ever seen the police cars out there? So cool. And like this big Holden sitting there,
stuff,
big Interceptor, it's full Mad Max spec, like, you know, Interceptor up the side of it. There's about 10 aerials on the roof. He's sitting there, he's got the window down, he's heard me coming for 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh my God. And this friend of mine, who's actually like quite a famous GT racer, one of the best GT racers in the world, who will remain nameless for now, but he's like, go here, go there. I'm following his directions, looking in the mirror. The boy's following us now. We haven't put the lights on, but he's following us. Where's he directing me into? The middle of a friggin' army base. Like, I drove right clean through the gate. Next thing, we're surrounded by all these trucks and machine guns. But anyway, well, your boy waited and then he disappeared, so we got off. But I just thought, like, if you're going to get done, you know, by the car you had on the screen a few minutes ago, or like a 600 horsepower Holden Interceptor with all their rails, it's like, I can take your ticket, please. It's like, you know.
So we're pretty much done, but I just realized I posted on Instagram seeing there's any questions, and I'll just give you one because it's a really good one, because we're almost out of time, which is this is from Dara_F on Instagram, and he asked you, how different are the setups of the cars for the shows when compared to being set up for road?
Good question, and the answer is very. For a couple of different reasons, you know, if you're doing whatever you're doing with your car, like obviously in the road, you want maximum grip and everything else. Now everyone has their own driving style, so everyone will want their car. Like take that. So we'll talk about the Super for a second, because it was literally built by a guy who's been my mechanic for over 10 years, who knows how I like a car to drive. I remember at the time I wanted the foot pedal just to go to the front brakes and things, you know, and all our people were telling him, it's like, you can't do that, you know, that won't work. And I was like, just put a small reservoir. I literally just wanted going the pedal, the front brakes, back brake on the handbrake. And like people who've been building rally cars, doing it for donkey's years and are very well established, were like, no, can't do that, it won't work. And I was like, it'll work. And Andy was like, I'll try it, but don't tell anyone. So we tried it, and it's perfect. And the reason I wanted that was because I can still keep on throttle, but left foot brake, so I can slow, say you're sideways. I can, you know, a lot of drift cars are set up like that. You know, so basically you can control if you're sliding in the lane of the arena, you can keep her sideways on the power, but you can slow the rate of the slide with the foot. You know, they can't get their head around that because it's a different kind of thing. So like I personally like the cars loose at the back, quite loose at the back, and as much grip up front as I can, rather than pushing the nose, especially on like a slippery floor or slippy surface. And then obviously the big thing is it's like you turn up for a race or whatever, you need the car to perform for 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. That's it, job done, weekend over. You know, we do a show, maybe you're doing 3 shows a day. You don't really want to be breaking things, so you have to learn how to adapt your driving. It's funny because like we had a few drifters in amongst the fast guys, and traditionally drift guys don't necessarily make the best sort of stunt guys, and the reason for that is because they're quite hard machinery, you know, lots of clutch kicks, and you know, so you have to adapt your driving style to try and drive everything as smooth as possible. That's why I mentioned Sam earlier. Like he's incredibly smooth, never puts a car under pressure, but can make it float like you wouldn't believe. Right, okay. And that's an art to learn. But setup wise, you know, you're maybe additional cooling, as much camber in the rear, maybe to take out a bit of grip.
Yeah, you said earlier like changing the diff oil, just
so that was just something. Obviously with proper show cars, you're running the proper different things. But we were just setting up these training cars, and they would often one wheel, you know, so you go around one way fine, other way not so good. And one of our mechanics, I think Mully, I think it was, actually came up with it. He's a lot of background in banger racing, stock cars, but like V8 stock cars and stuff, you know, nice stuff. And it was I'm nearly sure it was his idea. He was like, we'll try ATF fluid. Now you could put that in your car on the road, but the problem is it's not heavy enough. It hasn't got a body enough to protect the diff. So if you do 1,000 mile, the diff's going to blow itself to bits. You know what I mean? But for what we were doing, you know, it's just
a perfect example.
It's a lighter oil, and it makes the diff can lock up better. So it done our job perfect. But all these wee things, and that's what I'm saying, people should experiment a bit.
You just need to find out what works.
But the answer to the question is there's quite a difference in setup, and then obviously, you know, you want your hydraulic handbrake and whatever else, you know, brake pass valve perhaps.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for coming on.
No, thank you ever so much for having me. It's been good crack. Sorry I was a touch late again, but it was.
Tom likes when people are late.
Yeah,
I'm usually late. I am fairly usually late. Like, to be fair.
No, it's very much appreciated.
No, it was good. It was great
very
to be
interesting. Well, you know, like we could have easily went on there for another 2 hours.
I tend to waffle on when you get me going.
2.5.
Absolutely smashing.
You know, ours is a good length one. So here, very much appreciated. And we'll go outside here. You can do some donuts in my M3.
Is it warm? My son Connor, he's only 3, right? And like literally the whole time my wife has to borrow my car, and he literally see if she revs at above 2 grand, he's like, oil mum. he knows what oil temperature gauge is, and he knows where it's supposed to sit. Do you know what I mean? So I always tell him, you keep an eye on that oil gauge.
Maybe
You can teach Adam a thing or two.
Does yours?
He's brutal. Brutal.
Does yours still do burnouts? And
no, I don't do any of that. I've literally done a donut in that car once.
mine doesn't do
and I was
donuts
around
or
you.
burnouts anymore, and I want to know why. Like it just loses.
It's
its
probably
power.
just went, I've had enough of this crap.
That's what it's just like, no, stop it.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God.
It's trying to tell you, like,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
You'll go into BM, plug in the computer, and they'll be like, this guy, just take his car off.
I'm actually going to ring their customer service.
You
Excuse me,
does this
the
know
car
what
does not
warranties
do
like these
burnouts.
days? Any excuse, you
Yeah,
know?
they'll be like, nah, just
Yeah.
take it off. I'm like,
It's like, have you ever driven one of them up?
Yes, actually have. Yeah,
Oh, I've driven a few of them and
Ryan's,
they're
the
mad.
green one in France.
I've driven a few.
I feel like they're a wee bit hard.
Depends who you mapped. I've driven a few Litchfield cars, and I'm not kidding.
Well, I haven't. I didn't properly. I'm sure you drove a lot better than I did.
Well,
but,
no, I on the road, like not
Yeah.
not necessarily in a closed
I
road,
always
but
thought
on a road. But it's not even extra go. They drive better. They actually drive better.
really? Yeah.
The
Well,
gear
definitely
change
not
is
the one I
smoother. There's more torque low down. They're lovely. Like mine's completely standard, and I'm partly regional. It's a want to keep my warranties for a new car. You know.
One of the things I always thought about the M3 is the way they've been tuned for like a road car is
Yeah.
like if you don't have traction on, that thing is, you know.
Well, Litchfield have done
Wants
some
to
great
get you,
work.
like.
No, but a friend of mine has his all done, and he can control the torque and everything in every gear from the cruise control switch. So basically, he can, and he's a real anorak, so he loves this. I watched him spend 3.5 hours mapping Robin, three-wheel Robin one time for Jeremy, and it's another story. But yeah, you can control everything. He can control his torque in every single gear and all, and he's it all set up, you know. And I'm not kidding you. Like his car's got a mid pipe and everything. The pre-cat goes out of it, so it's a wee bit done to his. But I've just driven a few of them that are just mapped, and like the difference. It's not necessarily an overall performance, but they're so much nicer to drive. Just torque low down, and you know they're just nicer.
They're snappy at the lower end, like
They're
first and
solid
second.
mounted rear subframe too. You see, so
Like you get
I fear that in years to come we could have an E46 scenario on our case again, where they're ripping the floor plan out. Yeah. I had to see. When I had my CSL, I used to be terrified. Every time there was a clunk, I was like, "Oh my god!" and my car was a 20,000 mile one. You know what I mean? I was like flipping heck. You know, I got to the point where I didn't like driving the car for that purpose. I was like, I wish to God I bought one with 100 on it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Well, there we go. Look here. Thanks very much.
No, thanks for having me. It's been great fun.
We'll call it there. So let's go do some donuts.
Yeah.
And I hope I didn't offend anyone.
No, listen, that's weird.
They deserve it.
I hope you did.